begins in a time when people live in space and several galaxies other than Earth. A team of bounty hunters known as the S-Devil come to a location in search of someone, but they're surprised to find that the planet is full of radiation and toxic waste, which means the man they're looking for can't be there. Their leader, Seryung the Blazing Devil, who also doubles as the ship's captain, asks her android assistant, Sunja, who flies their aircraft, if they're in the wrong place. Sunja tells her that they got the correct planet number as given to them by the client, and it's the right location. Sunja expressionlessly explains that they have arrived at the exact destination they had set out to come. The android stops the ship midair and explains that they've arrived at the planet Earth, which was where they set out to go in the first place. Seryung becomes angry and calls out to another member of the team, Robert, and calls him a thief for supplying her wrong intel. Robert peers at the planet from the ship's windows and realizes that something is strange. He says he's sure that this is the right place, but he also looks confused as to how the planet Earth has come to be so inhabitable and full of radiation. Seryung glares at him and mentions that the place is drenched in radiation and doesn't have the faintest trace of oxygen. She asks him how it's possible that there's a high-value criminal hiding there. Robert just keeps looking at the planet through the glass, unsure of what to say. The captain mentions that it's not only absurd that a high-value criminal will be hiding in an uninhabitable pool of radiation, but also that he's a high-ranking member of a gang known as the Black Blood Gang. Robert just looks at her and hesitantly affirms that this seems to be the case. Seryung becomes more mad and starts to curse, but he confesses that it's true even though it doesn't seem like it. Robert explains that he got the intel when someone named Hao Moon raided the main system of the Beggars sect, which means it must be very credible. Seryung looks over at Sunja, who is monitoring activities on the planet, and asks what she thinks. Sunja starkly tells her that if their target came here, it would only be to commit suicide. She explains that the oxygen saturation of the planet is 23.76%, and the radiation contamination level is as high as 87 sieverts, which makes it perfect for killing oneself. Seryung becomes less hopeful by her response, and asks her if it's possible for a human to live there at all. Sunja explains that if such a human has a top-notch radiation shield installed and a high-capacity internal energy drive that spans multiple cycles, they would have a chance. But by having a chance, she explains that she meant they would last for about 6 hours tops before they died. The captain just stares at her blankly, since that wasn't the response she expected. Their trip is looking like more of a waste of time at the moment. Seryung glares at Robert and tells him she'll give him the benefit of the doubt. She asks him what he will do if they go down to the planet and find nothing. She asks him if he'll risk his life to pay for it. Robert stumbles backwards upon hearing her question, and asks if she's insinuating that he sacrifice his life just like that. The captain exclaims and tells him they'll go check it out. She threatens that they had better find their target there because if he's not there, he can be sure he's dead meat. Robert tries to brighten the situation, and he says that Sunja mentioned that she has detected a human life signal below the surface of the planet, but Seryung just gets more irritated. Seryung and Robert create a portal to gain entrance into the destitute and abandoned Earth. Sunja reads out the coordinates of the life form detected on the Earth and sends them there. She explains to them through the communication device that in the past, the place they're standing in was called Mount Tai. True to its name, it's a medieval place that's built on a mountain. Seryung and Robert just stand there, looking at how much of a mess it has become. Seryung is surprised to hear the name and asks Sunja if it's the same popular Mount Tai they all know about. Sunja affirms her suspicions and tells her that it's the very place the old farts from the Martial Alliance called a legendary sanctuary. It's also the origin of the Mount Tai star system. Seryung is surprised to hear the place has an affiliation to the Grand People who made the Martial Alliance, which is an alliance that was created to maintain intergalactic peace, and wonders why their so-called legendary sanctuary looks like a trash dump. The captain refers to the men who created the Martial Alliance as old geezers. She wonders why they don't do some cleaning in their sanctuary since they make so much money. Robert tells her that they're all talk and no action. He further explains that they don't put their hands into anything that doesn't make them money, which intrigues Seryung. As they keep working, Sunja tells them that they've gotten to the spot where she detected some life. It turns out to be an empty mass of land covered with sand and trash. Seryung asks her if she's sure because there's nothing there. Sunja tells her she's sure and informs her that there's something or someone alive right beneath their feet. The captain just stares at the ground, wondering how it's even possible for a person to still be alive while buried underground. She bends forward and feels the ground, wondering if she should set up the energy explosion right where they're standing. Robert asks her what she's talking about and what she's planning to do. Seryung doesn't answer him and just asks if whatever is down there is alive. She suddenly activates the energy from the internal energy drive she has strapped to her waist to channel the energy required to blow the ground open. An energy drive is some sort of contraption that allows humans to use ancient martial energy. As the internal energy drive begins to fill her up with power, a streak of green energy starts to surround her and cover where she's crouched. Seryung reasons that she would have long suffocated if she was the one buried that deep in the ground. She gives a command to channel the energy to the ground, and her eyes light up. The martial arts energy sets off an explosion that tunnels through the ground beneath them, expunging a mass of sand that's blocking their path. Some of the sand covers up Robert, who was just standing there, unaware that she planned to blow up the ground. Still, covered in the sand, he glumly tells her to maybe give him a heads up next time so he can get out of the way. The captain just looks into the hole with a disturbed look on her face, wondering if there's really anything under all this sand. She and Robert just stand in front of the large hole, wondering what to do next. The captain signals to Sunja and asks her if there's still any signs of life beneath them, hoping she hasn't blasted the person to bits. Sunja tells her that she's getting a faint signal, but there's still signs of life right beneath them. She adds that there's also a pretty large space down below, which indicates that there is some sort of underground facility there. Robert suggests that they bring down the electronic ladder to climb down the hole. Before he can finish his sentence, Seryung leaps right into the hole, which startles him. Robert just looks at her and jokes that she's always so hot-tempered. Meanwhile, Seryung leaps through the hole and tells Robert to follow her. She soon lands at the end of the hole, with Robert landing right behind her, wondering what kind of maniac he has for a boss. They immediately run into a large door with some ancient inscription written all over it. The direct translation of the inscription on the door is a statement by one Lee Mokjin, which reads like this: "The world fears me and has imprisoned me with the great dharma of esoteric teachings. If you clumsily try to awaken me, death will greet you first." Robert stares at the ancient text and wonders what it says. The captain signals to Sunja to translate the text using her advanced AI capabilities. Sunja tells them that it's an ancient language used over 2,000 years ago, and it roughly means, "Don't open if you don't want to die." Robert becomes excited by the translation and affirms that his intelligence was right after all, because only their target could have put a written threat there. Seryung asks him why their target would write his threat in an ancient language that no one understands. Robert just stutters and mentions that it could be possible that he's the guy they're looking for. The captain tells him that they can't be certain, but in any case, it's a good sign since they're threatening them not to open it. She starts to make her way towards the door, and says that the threat must mean that there's something valuable inside. She places her hands on the door, and they both hear a loud sound. Suddenly, the door opens on its own accord. The duo just stand there, perplexed. They continue their journey and step into an underground facility that seems to look like a temple. On a podium up front, a large creature that looks like a fur beast or a mass of hair just sits there. The creature seems to have human legs, but its entire body region is covered up by long, furry hair. Robert quickly sees it and wonders what it is. He notices that it looks human, but the rest of it doesn't look human at all. Seryung just stares at the creature blankly, looking unimpressed by the entire scenery. She boldly walks up the stairs leading to the podium to investigate what the creature is. When she gets to the top of the podium, the creature doesn't move an inch, but just sits there like it's not aware of their presence. When she looks closer, she realizes that he has a nose under the great mass of hair that's covering his head. It seems to be a man after all. But how can a man survive under all that rubble for so long? Robert, who just remains on the ground, asks her if the creature is alive and asks if it's human. He quickly recalls that it's been buried for 2,000 years, and it couldn't possibly be alive. Seryung stares blankly at the immobile creature and wonders what to make of it. The creature just sits there in total silence, and there's no way to tell whether it's dead or alive. She decides to break the ice and reaches out to touch it. She finally places her finger on its nose, hoping to get some sort of response from the creature. The creature still remains immobile even though her finger is on its nose and doesn't give any response at all. Something suddenly happens which starts to freak Seryung out. Suddenly, streaks of purple lightning start to emanate from the spot she touched him, and it looks like she's awakened it. Her eyes widen because she never expected any of this to happen. The creature's eyes begin to burn with a fiery red light, and streaks of purple lightning continue to emanate from its body, and it looks like some Greek god. Seryung suddenly becomes alert and moves backwards, quickly activating a blast of energy through her palm, since she's not sure what the creature is. The creature doesn't move out of the way, but it seems to put an energy field around her palm between itself and Seryung. She becomes surprised by what's happening and lets out the energy beam to destroy it. The surge of energy collides with the field the creature had set up and blows up between them, and it seems much more than what she can contain in such close range. The creature amplifies and redirects the attack. The energy surge fills up the entire underground facility and creates another large hole in the ground right above them. The energy released is so strong that it shoots right into space and goes past the S-Devil aircraft, and even Sunja sees it. The beam misses the craft by just a few meters, and it would have been incinerated if it was parked somewhere else. The energy surge alerts Sunja, who asks them what's going on over the comms. She calls out to the captain to know what's going on and what she did to trigger the energy surge, but she gets no response. Sunja keeps calling out to Seryung and Robert and starts to get worried when she doesn't receive any answer. Meanwhile, while Sunja calls for their attention over the comms, Seryung just lays on the ground several meters from the podium, as it seems the impact of the energy had knocked her a few feet away. Her radiation shield seems to have been slightly broken, and she seems to be bleeding from an injury. Seryung crawls backwards and rests on a nearby wall, still speechless because of what had just happened. A few meters from her, Robert lays on the ground, obviously knocked out by the impact of the blast. Seryung soon locks her gaze on the creature on the podium, who now stands right in front of her. The creature stands upright and walks towards her, looking unscathed by the impact of the blast. The creature asks her who she is, but Seryung just lays there and stares at it, still in shock. The creature asks her who dares awaken him, but he still gets no response from Seryung. Seryung just stares at it blankly, and it seems she doesn't understand what it's saying. She continues to stare at it, unsure of what to do and what the creature is. The creature starts to think to itself if Seryung's rude awakening is a challenge. It questions if a martial artist capable of challenging him has finally been born. Moments pass, and Seryung just sits on the ground, still unsure of what will happen next. Meanwhile, Robert is still out cold and isn't aware of any of the things happening. The creature orders Seryung to speak and give him a response, but it seems like she doesn't understand what he's saying, so she keeps staring at him in bewilderment. The man-like creature rashly insists that she tells him why she has chosen to awaken him. Seryung suddenly becomes angry that she can't understand a word of what he's saying, so she decides to activate her real-time translation mode. The creature raises its hands, and it looks like a man. She hears him threaten to kill her if she doesn't answer his questions, and it seems he doesn't realize that she doesn't speak his language. Seryung becomes alerted by his threat to kill her and tries to get up. As the creature raises up his hands, he repeats his threat to kill her if he doesn't get a response. The captain gets right into action and shoots beams of lightning at him, wondering what kind of monster she's dealing with. The impact of her attack causes another massive explosion that lands right on the creature and exposes it to massive heat. She creates another explosive ball in her hands and tells the creature to die. She keeps throwing series of explosive energy at it, which swallows up the creature till all you can see is fire and smoke, hoping it would die. The entire cave becomes littered with sand that is spilled around by the continuous onslaught of explosive power. Seryung decides to rest for a while after she gets tired from expending so much power. She starts to breathe heavily to calm herself down, and the internal drive system alerts her that she has overloaded the drive because she has used up 1.2 cycles out of the 1.14 that's available. Out of nowhere, the creature appears out of the rubble, totally unscathed, and walks towards her. Meanwhile, Seryung's energy system warns her to recharge her internal energy so she can keep battling. The creature just stands in front of her, and not one hair on it seems to have been affected by all the explosion. The captain looks surprised and wonders how it's still in the same shape after all those hits. The creature analyzes her martial art technique and tells her she used the Quantum Golden Summit Divine Art and the Red Mist Divine Palm. He mentions that though they are the martial art of the Emi sect, he has noticed that it seems to have many impurities, which suggests that she learnt it through theft. He tells her that, in other words, this means that she's just a thief scraping by with skills she acquired from grave robbing, and he looks pissed off. He suddenly starts to levitate off the ground, and a purple light envelopes him, causing a destructive whirlwind to circle through the cave. Seryung just stares at him in horror since she's run out of power to dispense. The creature asks her what effrontery a mere thief has to disrupt his eternal sleep, as his purple energy starts to increase more and more. Seryung continues to stare at him, afraid that he's going to launch an attack to destroy her. He finally declares that she's going to die and proceeds to launch his attack. Something odd happens, which surprises the captain and makes her crash to the ground. The creature falls face flat to the ground, and it seems to be dead. Seryung just watches from afar, wondering what has happened to it. She asks herself what the heck just happened, and watches the creature who seems to have passed out in front of her after threatening to kill her just a few minutes ago. She hears a voice from behind who tells her the creature must have died. It turns out to be Robert, who has finally woken up from his slumber. He tells her it's only natural that it died after being exposed to the radiation on the planet without a shielding field. He wonders how the creature was able to hold out for so long before dying. Sunja suddenly tells them that the creature is still alive because its breathing and pulse are still normal. Robert is surprised and asks her why the creature suddenly collapsed. Sunja runs some analysis and tells him that the creature seems to have collapsed from energy depletion. She further explains that its body is fine, but the battery inside its stomach seems completely drained, which further confuses Robert. Seryung is surprised when she hears that it had fainted due to energy depletion in its stomach. Seryung still crouches close to the wall, drained from the energy she has expended, as she and Robert stare at the immobile creature. She reasons that, in other words, it must have fainted from hunger, which means it was starving from not having eaten for the past 2,000 years. Hours later, the duo return to their aircraft, and Robert protests about something to the captain. He asks why she brought it along into the aircraft, and he screams they should have left it behind, especially because of how dangerous it seemed to be in the cave. He reminds her of how the creature went berserk just moments ago, and how it seems harder to kill it than to kill a cockroach with a nuclear blast. He further mentions that at least a radioactive cockroach would be worth a few bucks, but this crazy monster isn't worth anything to them, and there's no need to carry it along. Meanwhile, they all stare at the immobile creature that Se-ryung had wrapped in some sort of bind to keep it from moving around. Se-ryung insists that the creature is worth money. Robert and Sunya just stare at her blankly, wondering what she meant by that. They wait for her to explain, but she just stands there, with the creature still lying in front of them. She continues by saying the creature isn't just worthy money, it's worth lots of it. They both exclaim when she says that, wondering what she means. Se-ryung asks them what the most valuable cultural heritage they have today is. Sunja answers that the ancient martial arts are the most valuable cultural heritage. She adds that the closer the art is to the original form, the more expensive it is. Se-ryung agrees and mentions that it's obvious that the fuzzball that they captured is an ancient martial artist from around 2,000 years ago, and no less based on the inscriptions on his cave. She explains that 2,000 years ago was a legendary period when martial arts were highly developed. She says that even the lowest class F-grade techniques from that era can fetch at least 10,000 credits. She also adds that the creature isn't on a low level like F-grade, and he was probably a grandmaster that was at least an S rank or higher. Robert follows her train of thought and blurts out they'd be hitting the jackpot if he truly is S rank. He mentions that the only issue they can have now is if he wakes up on their ship. Se-ryung tells them not to worry because she tied him with celestial silkworm threads that are used in spaceship repairs. She gloats that even the head of the Shaolin sect couldn't cut it if he wanted to. Seconds later, they hear a ripping sound, and Se-ryung stops talking when she realizes what just happened. She glances behind her, hoping it's not what she thinks. When she looks back, the creature has easily ripped her treasured celestial silkworm threads like a polythene wrapper. He just stands there staring at them. He continues his threats by asking what effrontery lowly grave robbers like them have to desecrate him. He starts to burn in fiery anger again and threatens to tear them to shreds. The captain starts to curse in anger as she brings out her sword because she didn't expect him to set himself free so easily, and Robert starts to blame her because he had told her this would happen. While they prepare to fight him, they're surprised by what happens next. As the creature lights up in a blazing glory and prepares to incinerate them, Sunja walks in front of him with a plate filled with grilled hot dogs. The hot dogs look so appealing, and the aroma fills up the atmosphere in the spaceship. Robert and Se-ryung watch in surprise as things quickly turn around. Unlike what they expected, the creature quickly ignores the fight and starts to gobble up the plate of hot dogs like a madman. All three of them watch as the creature sits on their table and frantically swallows the hot dogs, ignoring their presence. The captain asks Sunja how she knew that would work. Sunja just tells them it was obvious since he's been starving for a very long time. She explains that the best thing for any hungry beast is a sausage. They can only manage to exclaim at Sunja's intelligence and quick thinking. Meanwhile, the ship remains suspended close to planet Earth, where they had just left moments ago. A few moments later, the creature has a civilized discussion with the S-Devil bounty hunters. He recounts what they had told him, that they aren't grave robbers, but just bounty hunters who accidentally woke him up. Just to get things right, he also asks that they had said that this world is the world 2,000 years after his time, where humans had gone further in their desires to harm each other. Thereby, they destroyed the world and have decided to live in the skies. Se-ryung tells him that things have stabilized ever since then, because the humans decided not to allow any weapons apart from martial arts, including nuclear weapons. Our guy just asks what nuclear weapons are, since he's about 2,000 years old and doesn't know what nuclear weapons are. Still confused, he asks the bounty hunters what the current era is called. Se-ryung asks him what he means, because they no longer refer to times as eras anymore. She tells him it's the year 1105 in the galactic calendar. The creature asks them why they're using the galactic year and sarcastically asks them if they also live in the sky, because their story seems like a pill too hard to swallow. They think he's starting to understand his story, so Se-ryung tells him that they woke him up after 2,000 years and he should be immensely grateful. The creature becomes irritated by her words and story and calls it nonsense. He asks who she thinks she's talking to and if she even knows who he is. He insists that they're third-rate grave robbers and they're trying to deceive him with their nonsensical stories. He starts to burn up again in anger, and he asks them if they wish to die by lying to him. The three bounty hunters simply point to the nearby window on the ship, signaling for him to look for himself. He quickly turns around and looks at what they're pointing at. The creature becomes transfixed, and he's shocked at what he sees. Out of the window, A view of the radiation-filled Earth, along with the sun, which floats in a distance, is clear. Se-ryung tells him to look closely at the place over there, referring to him as Fuzzball, then correcting herself, and referring to him as Grandpa and Master. She tells him the planet right in front of them is where he lived. He looks at the radiation-filled Earth and asks if that's really the world he lived in, shocked at how things have become. The captain replies with an affirmation and tells him it's totally ruined now, as the creature moves toward the window to get a closer look. She tries to comfort him and asks him if he now believes they're saying the truth now that he's seen it for himself. He suddenly starts to burn again, and he states that even if he wants to believe, they surely don't expect him to believe that the land he was standing on is round. The captain just hits her head, wondering how astonishingly ignorant he must be. Robert just stares at them in surprise. The smell of the creature's hair and stinking body fills the ship, and the captain starts to wonder where the terrible smell is coming from. She quickly covers her nose and tells him that he'll learn the rest later, but asks him to take a shower first and maybe trim his hair since they're going to be staying together for a while anyway. Our guy just asks what they mean by shower since they never had showers in this civilization. Se-ryung makes it clearer and tells him to go take a bath. The three bounty hunters wait outside their restroom while the new guy takes a shower in their bathroom. Inside, the creature enjoys the shower time and takes his precious time since he's too old to be rushed anyway. While he has a bath, they leave a couple of clothes on the ground for him to wear when he's done. Robert asks the captain why she didn't just leave the guy's hair as it was. Meanwhile, the guy cuts all his hair off, and it piles up on the ground. Robert shares his concerns with the captain that he's worried that some mummified creature will come out of the bathroom since the guy has cut off all his hair. Robert stops mid-sentence to look at the new guy, who had just stepped out of the bathroom, and Se-ryung also freezes. The new guy steps out looking much cleaner with water dripping from his body. He cleans his hair with a hot towel, and his exposed body shows that he's not a monster after all, but he looks human. He removes the towel out of the way to expose a gorgeous young face with black earrings and a muscular toned body. He doesn't notice the fact that the three of them just stand there looking at him speechless, and he asks them if there's still more of what he ate earlier. Se-ryung stars at him wide-eyed because she was expecting a grumpy-looking old creature and not such an attractive person. She wonders who this guy could be. Later, the ship continues its course through space and leaves the area around the Earth to go somewhere else. The new guy just glues to the windows and stares at all the celestial bodies, since it's his first time seeing them this close. He thinks to himself that this seems to be the sky after all, and they weren't lying to him. He thinks about how he once lamented that the world is narrow, but he now realizes that it is truly vast and strange. Out of nowhere, someone pinches his face while he's looking through the glass. He looks beside him and notices Se-ryung pinching his cheeks as she blankly stares at him. She frowns and asks him how old he is. She reminds him that the years he spent in hibernation don't count, just so he knows. While the captain questions the new guy, Robert and Sunja watch them, considering how odd the entire situation is. They soon reach a building that seems to be built into an asteroid that is in the Pleiades. The Pleiades is a cluster of stars in the Milky Way. The building is the Asteroid Space Tavern, where folks living in space come to have a good time. Inside the tavern, there's an inn called the Wild Crane, with people having drinks and food down below. At one of the tables, Sunja watches in horror as she sees something that surprises her. The new guy just stares squarely at her, wondering what's so big of a deal. The unimaginable sight is now clear as our guy stuffs 6 pieces of hot dogs into his mouth at once, with another mountain of hot dogs still in front of him. Robert whispers to Sunja and asks how a human can eat that much, and Sunja mentions that he has been starving for the past 2,000 years. Robert becomes more worried and asks if he's going to eat 2,000 years worth of food just to quench his hunger, and Sunja tells him that might be the case judging from the way he's eating. Moments after, our guy clears out the plates and stares at the bounty hunters, probably expecting that they make another order. Meanwhile, the keeper of the Wild Crane Inn, Wang the 18th, speaks with Se-ryung and is intrigued by her request. He asks to confirm if she's truly looking for a broker. Se-ryung affirms that she is and says that it must be someone rich and tough, because what she has to sell is extremely expensive and valuable. He jokingly asks her how expensive the thing must be to make the usually laid-back blazing devil so frantic. Se-ryung asks him how much a full collection of 2,000-year-old martial arts manuscripts would be worth if they were all originals and all S-rank. Her words alert Wang, who opens his tiny eyes and stops puffing his cigarette to listen more closely to what she's saying. He continues his puffing and lets out a stream of smoke, considering the question she asked him. Moments later, Wang is seen sitting all by himself after the captain leaves the meeting. One of the nearby guards asks Wang if what she said could really be real. The guard continues by saying that S-rank originals from 2,000 years ago must be incredibly valuable. Wang just continues puffing his cigarette and tells him that the manuscripts are all worth 0 credits. The guard asks again to be sure he heard correctly, since he's certain manuscripts like that could go for a fortune. The innkeeper repeats himself and tells him that the manuscripts are all worth 0 credit. He explains that if such things existed, just one book alone could buy a planet and more. He wonders how a mere mid-tier bounty hunter like the Blazing Devil can claim to have found a bunch of them, which means they must be fakes. He tells the guard to get his head out of the clouds and kick them out. Meanwhile, Seryung returns to the table and asks where Sunja has suddenly gone. Robert tells her that she has gone to get some more supplies and asks how her talk with the innkeeper went. Seryung's eyes light up and she says their talk was good. She even mentions that Wang promises to contact them immediately he finds someone to buy. Her attention is quickly drawn to something in front of them. In front of them, the new guy relaxes on one of the benches with a dozen empty plates trashed in front of him, as it seems he must have eaten all the food. The captain asks Robert that it's not possible that he ate all that food and hopes her eyes are deceiving her. Robert just tells her that they're lucky he just stopped eating. The captain puts her hands on her head in regret and tells Robert that she would have done something else if it wasn't for the money they could make out of this. While she's talking, the tavern's door burst open. The sound draws the attention of everyone in the tavern, who look back to see who their guests are. Some men dressed in matching attire walk into the tavern, and they look like they're trouble. Seryung is alerted by their presence, as it seems she recognizes them. She recognizes the serious-looking men as men from a group called the Heavenly Demon Sect. How odd, demon and heaven in the same word. The leader of the squad that came into the tavern starts to scan the surroundings, and it seems like he's looking for someone. He looks at the profiles of the people who are seated in the tavern through a futuristic lens. Meanwhile, Seryung affirms that the person scanning the tavern is none other than the leader of the Red Wolf squad of the Heavenly Demon Sect, named Sanjin Wu Yue. Robert affirms that and mentions that the Red Wolf platoon are the inspectors of the Demon Sect. He asks why they're here, so Seryung tells him that they specialize in tracking, so they must be pursuing someone. She whispers to him not to make eye contact with them so as not to irritate them. Our guy overhears them talking and asks them if they just mentioned a demon sect. Seryung turns around to face him, wondering why he's interested in the sect. The new guy, who still has crumbs of hot dogs on his mouth, asks them if they could possibly be referring to the Heavenly Demon Sect, and it seems he recognizes them. The captain asks him how he knows the Heavenly Demon Sect when he's been asleep for thousands of years. She realizes that the Heavenly Demon Sect would have existed in his own timeline too. Our guy stares at her in surprise and asks why the people aren't fleeing in the presence of the Heavenly Demon Sect. He tells them that if they were truly the Demon Sect members, people should be fleeing in panic. Seryung asks him why they would flee. She mentions that the Heavenly Demon Sect has its issues, but they still pride themselves on being the foremost orthodox and faith-practicing sect in the universe, because they really are the best. The new guy stares at her in surprise. He wonders how the demon sect and the word orthodox can be used in the same sentence. Suddenly, he thinks to himself that his dream, which had always felt empty and distant, seems to have truly come to pass. Meanwhile, Sanjin notices someone odd while he's inspecting the crowd and stops to confirm. A couple sitting near him look back, wondering why he's looking at them. His target isn't the couple, but another man who's quietly sitting alone with his head on his table. Sanjin walks up to him and orders him to look up so he can see his face. When he looks up, the system reads that his internal energy is 52.7 C. It also shows the martial arts he knows and shows that he's wanted on charges of level 2 robbery and assault. Sanjin tells the man that today is his lucky day because he's not the one they're targeting. He orders him to go to the Martial Alliance immediately and go turn himself in, threatening to harm him if he does otherwise. Sanjin stops his sentence midway, and his eyes widen as he feels something odd. A hand seems to have landed on his head, and Sanjin stares blankly, wondering who would have to effrontery to not only be near him, but to put their hands on his head. It turns out to be our martial arts master, who starts to stroke Sanjin's head like a cat. Our guy mentions how admirable he looks, still patting his head like he's a child. The martial artist master tells Sanjin that his seemingly impossible dream seems to have come to pass. Meanwhile, the folks in the tavern freeze and stare at him because they've never seen anyone have the boldness to even come near a member of the demon sect. Some other guys who are playing cards stop playing, realizing that nothing but trouble can come from such an encounter. The martial arts master tells them that they've brought his dream to pass, referring to them as young ones. He starts to fawn over the Heavenly Demon Sect and mentions that it's admirable that they managed to do this. He goes further and hugs Sanjin's head, comforting him for the sufferings they young ones must have endured to achieve such a stature. Even the man that Sanjin was threatening just speechlessly stares at the martial arts master, wondering what the heck is going on. As he continues to hug Sanjin's head, Sanjin doesn't move an inch and asks if the new guy is a child with intelligence issues. Roberts tries to calm Sanjin down and tells him that their friend isn't technically mentally unstable, but he just lacks any social skills whatsoever. Sanjin calls the martial master a child and tells him he should know it's also his lucky day, and tries to remove his hands from around his head. He tells him that if he had sensed just a little bit of martial art from his body, he would have shattered him to pieces. Sazin tries to pull our guy's hands off him but realizes it's harder than he thought and begins to struggle. He's surprised that he can't remove the kid's hand no matter how much energy he's using. Robert wonders why the Red Wolf Gang leader seems to be grunting and asks Seryung if something is wrong, but she tells him she's not sure. Sanjin tries harder to peel off the new guy's hand, using more strength from his martial arts technique, but it doesn't work, so he starts to curse. Sanjin decides to make use of his internal energy drive, so the system activates something called a Blood Wolf Art at the maximum drive rate. Sanjin's eye becomes totally white, and he entered into another mode entirely. He manages to release a great amount of power, and he displaces the new guy, and he shouts at him to stop messing around. The energy he releases is so strong that it encircles the entire inn and knocks away several tables. The onlookers look at him in horror, realizing that it's about to go down. More folks keep watching him to know what's going to happen next. Some of his subordinates watch from behind with their mouths open. The martial arts master quickly returns to his friends and leaves about a meter of space between himself and Sanjin, who is about to bring down the whole building. Sanjin starts to calm down when he sees that his enemy is unscathed, and he realizes the extent of damage he has done to the shop. Seryung tells Robert that it seems the Red Wolf squad leader isn't in good shape recently, and that would explain his inability to remove the new guy's hands. Meanwhile, our guy just stands there and stares blankly at Sanjin. The Red Wolf squad leader starts to scan the new guy, and he asks him who he is. He wonders how it's possible that he is totally unaffected by the release of so much energy when he was planning to kill him instantly. To make things worse, the system scan shows that there is no record of the new guy's internal energy or martial arts, and he finds out he's not in the database at all. Sanjin wonders how a pure natural being can have zero internal energy and still be alive. While he's thinking, our guy interrupts his thinking and tells Sanjin that the Blood Wolf demon art that he just used is one of the lower-level martial arts among the Heavenly Demon's body cultivation art, but he commends that fact the sect has been able to pass it down. He tells the Red Wolf squad leader that the only issue is that his internal energy and chi are not in harmony, because it seems his training method is flawed. Our guy decides to comfort him by telling him today is his lucky day since he gets to meet him to help him personally correct it, which is an opportunity of a lifetime. Sanjin just gets more irritated by his words and calls him a lunatic. He summons a stream of liquid-looking fire and tries to kill the martial arts master on the spot. He summons a fiery hand, which he refers to as the Red Wolf Demon Claw's first form. He quickly strikes our guy with the demon claw, but he simply dodges it by bending backward and doesn't leave where he's standing. Behind the martial master, there's a stream of fire that destroys the inn and causes people to run around in panic. Sanjin continues his rampage and summons another power called the Red Wolf Explosion. But our guy just dodges that one too, with his hands still in his pockets. The Red Wolf squad leader starts to get really exasperated now, and he starts to summon several powers at once. He activates one Red Wolf Tremor Wave and a Red Wolf Ghost Claw at the same time, but the martial art master just dodges it like it's child play. The veins in Sanjin's head start to bulge now as he summons all his strength and intellect to try to take the new guy down. He even transforms one of his hands into a demonic claw and surrounds himself with a whirlwind of demonic fire, hell-bent on killing this dude. In the meantime, our guy keeps watching his display. He gauges that Sanjin has enough internal energy, and his forms are precise, and he keeps on watching each of his moves as he angrily tries to kill him. Eventually, he decides that there seems to be a problem somewhere with the way he's doing it. Sanjin just goes all out, and now his eyes are red, as it seems he's maxing out all the attacks he knows. Our guy soon gets angry and smashes a hand over Sanjin's head, telling him it's enough. The impact of his hand presses the Red Wolf squad's head like a marshmallow, and it seems his brain and skull have been disfigured. As Sanjin breaks the floor with the impact of his fall, our guy tells him his martial arts skills are crude. A large hole develops around where Sanjin hits his head, and it looks like a comet has hit the floor of the inn, cracking the stony floor. The rest of the squad are shocked to see their boss have a mouthful of stone, and they open their mouths at the horrific scene. The onlookers in the tavern are more surprised as they stare wide-eyed, not expecting the odd turn of events. Seryung and Robert are also equally surprised, since this is the first time they would witness members of the prestigious Heavenly Demon sect get it handed to them. Sanjin just remains in the ground, with his head comfortably resting in the space he bulldozed with his impact. Our guy stands in front of him, with his hands still in his pockets. He tells him he learned the skills, but he learned it like a parrot. He explains that true martial arts are not just about imitating skills, but adapting them and making them your own. After he issues the correction, he tells Sanjin to get up and try to hit him again if he understands the correction. Sanjin just remains in the hole, probably in need of brain surgery, and the martial art master angrily tells him to get up. The rest of the Red Wolf squad just stares at him speechlessly, wondering what the heck just happened. They eventually get agitated and ask him where he got the effrontery to attack their platoon leader. They call him a brat and run towards him with the intent to kill. They jump at him with several weapons and martial arts skills activated, but MC just stands there with his hands still in his pocket. Moments later, we end up in the 32nd district of the Heavenly Demon Sect. All the members of the Demon Sect who had been at the bar are seen injured still inside the tavern, also bearing hand marks that are pressed into their skulls. The commander of the district watches from a screen in disbelief, and it seems he can't believe his eyes. Meanwhile, a robot scans Sanjin, who seems to be unconscious, and tries to open his eyelids to confirm if he's still alive. He seems to be bleeding from his nose and mouth and missing a few teeth. Sanjin and the rest of the crew are loaded up on stretchers, while other members of the Heavenly Demon Sect put a do not cross line around them to stop the onlookers from crossing the crime scene. The commander, Zhang Ritak, continues to watch the whole conundrum, and he remarks that this is unbelievable. A senior elder of the district, Joe Chunrock, tells him that it's fortunate that they only suffered severe bruising and their lives are not in danger. Zhang wonders what he means by fortunately, when all he sees are badly beaten men that look like they'll need surgeries. He mentions that the worst part is that they were beaten by a mere unknown stranger as he looks at the new guy's picture. He looks pretty innocent in the shot, but little do they know that he's carrying 2,000 years worth of knowledge and power. Zhang asks Joe again if their sect's Red Wolf platoon was really put in such a state by a mere stranger. He asks him if this unknown stranger is truly not registered in the Martial Alliance database, and Joe tells him he's not, but his companions were registered. Joe explains that they are a group of bounty hunters known as the S-Devil. He says they mainly clean up B-class or lower petty criminals. He tells Zhang that their leader is a person named Seryung the Blazing Devil. Meanwhile, in the S-Devil aircraft, the new guy humbly sits at the table with a napkin around his neck and a knife and fork, expecting food. He sits across the table from Seryung and Robert, who just watch him and try to figure out what to say or ask. At the Heavenly Demon District, Zhang asks to know more about Seryung the Blazing Devil. Joe tells him that she's a quite well-known bounty hunter that goes between orthodox and unorthodox worlds. He tells him that they left the Wild Crane Inn after the incident, but he says they can track them. He asks the commander if they should send a team to pursue them. Commander Yang tells him not to bother and tells him he'll handle the matter personally. Joe just stares at him blankly, wondering what he means by that. He bows out and proceeds to leave the commander to think of his next course of action. The commander presses a nearby button and decides to place a call to an ally. The system starts to initiate a call with someone on the large screen after the button is pressed. The commander patiently waits for the call to go through. Soon enough, a priestly-looking man named Kim Sungbom, the leader of a group called the Greenwood Group, appears on the screen and smiles at him. Kim tells him it's been a while and greets him. He asks the commander if there's a request he has. Zhang frowns but doesn't say anything for a while. Meanwhile, Seryung watches the stars through the window of the aircraft and tries to clear her head. In the 32nd Heavenly Demon District, the commander seems to have finished relaying the message to Kim, who asks if he'd like the Greenwood Group to handle the issue. Somewhere else in space, the S-Devil aircraft blazes through space. Inside, our guy starts to get tired of waiting for food that doesn't seem to be coming. In front of him, Seryung and Roberts just watch him, still not saying a word. They continue to watch him wait for Sunja to finish grilling the hot dogs, and they still don't say a word. Robert whispers to the captain and asks her if she's honestly as scared as he is right now. Seryung looks at him with an irritated expression and asks him what he's talking about. He reminds her that she also saw it with her own eyes too. He reminds her that Sanjin Wei and the Red Wolf platoon are all A-rank martial artists, and he had just slapped them down with a single blow of his hands. Apparently, a single blow of his hand hit all of Sanjin's subordinates and sent them flying back, with teeth flying out left and right. Roberts recalls seeing them flying away like bugs and remembers one guy who smashes into a pillar. Seryung just looks at him and doesn't say anything. She later says that she could have taken those guys too if she fought them seriously, since they're the lowest level of their rank, even though they're A rank. Robert just confesses that he, on the other hand, would only have been able to scratch them just a bit if he had put his life on the line. He reminds her that the martial arts master just swatted them aside like flies, and he didn't seem to struggle with it at all. Seryung gets tired of listening to him and walks toward our guy. She bangs her hands on the table, and he just looks at her expressionlessly, wondering what the problem is now. She softly tells him that they need to talk. He just keeps staring at her, and he doesn't say a word. He soon breaks the silence and tells her he'll have to eat first before they can talk. Seryung sits in front of him with her arms crossed and insists that they talk first. She rudely speaks to him and asks him what his name is. Robert quickly interjects and suggests that she used honorifics to refer to him, but she just asks him if he's deaf and asks him what his name is again. Sunja soon arrives with a wide dish of freshly grilled hot dogs, and this catches our guy's attention. The captain tells him not to even think about eating until they're done talking, and she demands that he tell her his name. He just glares at her, but he doesn't say a word. Robert tries to resolve the conflict and whispers to the captain that it's popularly said that it's not right to bother a dog when it's eating, so he suggests that they let him eat first, but the captain doesn't seem to be buying it. He tells them his name is Lee Mokjin. Seryung asks him about his identity and past profession to understand how he was able to do all he did. He just stares at her blankly and doesn't say a word, still holding onto his cutlery. She continues to stare at him, expecting a response, and it seems they've started a staring competition. He finally breaks the ice and tells her he's a heavenly demon. Not just a heavenly demon, but he's a supreme heavenly demon. Seryung repeats what he just said and wonders if he truly just referred to himself as a supreme heavenly demon. She wonders what nonsense Lee is saying and asks if they fed him bad hot dogs that's making him hear things. Suddenly, the aircraft's alarm starts to blare out and the warning lights come on. Everyone becomes alert and they wonder what's happening. Nearby, another aircraft announces that its target has been detected. Sunja quickly goes to the system and explains that someone who's close to them is targeting them. Seryung rises up to check it out, and she says she knew the heavenly demon would be coming after them and wouldn't leave them alone after Lee beat up the Red Wolf platoon. She exclaims in frustration, realizing they're in big trouble. Sunja continues monitoring things on the system and tells her it's not the heavenly demon sect. A giant ship with a skull painted across its body appears, and Sunja tells them the group targeting them is Greenwood. Meanwhile, outside the ship, several aircraft that belong to the Greenwood group are seen surrounding the S-Devil aircraft. From inside one of the ships, Kim is told that the S-Devil ship has been confirmed and they're the targets they were paid bounty to deal with. Kim, the leader of the Galaxy Division of the 72 Strongholds of Greenwood, also known as the Black Tiger of the Crescent Moon, just watches and doesn't say a word. The Greenwood military captain asks Kim if they should go ahead to fire the EMP capture round. Kim asks the captain if it's confirmed that these guys are bounty hunters. The captain tells him that they are, and they found out that they mainly operate in the outskirts of the galaxy, and their leader is someone called Blazing Devil Seryung. The Black Tiger thinks to himself and wonders why the Heavenly Demon sect would bother with a small-time sect like this, and it seems something is fishy. He recalls the conversation he had with Yang, where he had offered him the job to deal with this problem. He remembers cheerfully accepting the bounty, asking Yang for the completion conditions, and asking what they should do once they capture the target. Unlike what he expected, Yang tells him not to capture them but to just erase them from existence. Kim's eyes widen in horror, and he clarifies by asking if he wants them to kill the targets. In the present time, the Black Tiger mentions that this situation seems odd, and he suspects that something is going on. He mentions that the Heavenly Demon sect are far better at taking lives than they are, and he believes that there must be a reason they had specifically entrusted them with the task. The captain just listens to his deduction and becomes equally surprised. Kim hesitates for a while and considers what to do next. He says that there must be a trap that has been set for them inside the S-Devil ship. Inside the S-Devil ship, Seryung peers out the window and sees the fleet of ships surrounding them. She mentions that the Greenwood group are bandits and must be here to rob them, but Robert tells her he doubts that. He explains that there's no reason for the group to bring such a large fleet just to rob extremely poor folks like them, since there's little profit they can make. Seryung winces at him for calling them extremely poor folks, and tells him she gets it, but it's odd when he puts it like that. She tells him it doesn't matter anyway, and calls the Greenwood group scumbag robbers. She threatens to beat them and toss them out if they get in their way. Robert just looks at her making big-mouthed claims, while Lee watches the beautiful fleets of ships surrounding them. Sunja finally speaks some sense into her and tells her it's not that simple, since they are just a part of the Galaxy Division of the 72 Strongholds of Greenwood, and it appears that they had mobilized an entire division to come capture them. Seryung is surprised to hear that the whole division was mobilized, and she asks if that means that their leader, Kim, is here too. Meanwhile, Lee keeps watching the Greenwood ships scan them, and he exclaims about how cool it looks. Seryung thinks about the Black Tiger Kim Sungbom and says that even she cannot beat that guy easily. Robert tells her she can't beat him at all because she'd be dead in 3 moves if she stood against him. Seryung becomes annoyed and tells him it's not that bad, and she says she may be able to do something if she really puts her mind to it. Robert doesn't let her finish her sentence and tells her to forget it, and suggests that they surrender quickly, and tells her not to panic since they have nothing to lose. The captain just frowns since he had just burst her bubbles. She soon rises to the occasion and commands everyone to follow her command from now on. She explains that they'll first fire the EMP capture round to cut off the ship's energy and incapacitate them, which she'll permit. She says that they'll board the ship armed, and she'll permit that too. Lastly, she says they'll allow them to search the ship, and they'll also donate any unnecessary items to them for survival if they want them. Robert just asks her how that is any different from surrendering, but she shouts at him to comply as instructed. She goes to Pat Lee, who is still stargazing, and tells him not to panic when the EMP hits because the ship will shake a little bit. Seryung tells him that the EMP has no destructive power because they're not allowed to use ship weapons because of the space laws. She gloats that it seems Lee didn't understand that, but just tells him not to interfere since they'll leave when they take whatever they want. She mentions that the only time she won't be able to guarantee anything is if a fight breaks out and things escalate. Seryung asks Sunja if she's locked on and asks her to brace for the impact of the EMP round. Sunja suddenly exclaims and tells them it's not an EMP round but a photon cannon, and the system starts to give a danger alert. Now this shocks Seryung, who just turns around in surprise. Sunja tells her that they're using a ship-destroying photon cannon, which means they're trying to kill them. Seryung goes on high alert and says that this is crazy. Meanwhile, on the Greenwood ship, the captain tells Kim that what they're doing violates space regulations, and it may cause them trouble later on. He suggests that it would be better for them to capture the target and quietly dispose of them. The division leader tells him they can't do that because he has a bad feeling. He tells them to just blow the ship to dust and complicate matters since they can just shift all the responsibility to the client, who is the Heavenly Demon Sect. Kim orders that the cannons be fired when ready. Meanwhile, tension increases inside the S-Devil ship. Seryung asks Sunja if they can warp the ship to another location, but Sunja tells her they can't because they are surrounded on all sides. Seryung asks if they can use the shields, but Sunja tells her they won't work since they've sold some of the ship's parts to cater for their living expenses. A look of horror develops on the captain's face as she becomes confused about what to do. A few moments ago, she had it all figured out. Now, they're about to be blown to bits. In the Greenwood ship, the captain tells the division leader that the photon cannon has been fully charged. Kim orders that they fire the photon cannon. The cannon is activated, and they fire at the S-Devil bounty hunters, who are just waiting to be wiped out of existence. Seryung Sunja and just watches their death arrives. Robert screams at the top of his lungs and Lee just watches, still looking clueless about all that's going on. An explosion occurs after the photon cannot hit the target, and it seems that the end of our beloved bounty hunters. Kim watches from his ship as the explosion rips through the space around them. The explosion is so bright that the light from it reaches the ship he's in. Suddenly his eyes widen when something strange catches his attention. After the fire from the explosion goes out, the S-Devil ship looks to be completely intact and unscathed. The ship flies despite the onslaught of dangerous fire, and it looks like the attack didn't hit them at all. In front of the S-Devil ship, a larger round ship appears, who seems to have taken the impact of the photon cannon. The larger ship moved in front of the S-Devil ship just in time to block the attack, and it completely shielded it from the Greenwoods. A woman wearing white armor and holding a white spear appears on top of the new ship. Seryung, who had been holding on to Sunja for dear life, asks what that is. A look of horror develops on Kim's face as he recognizes the woman as the 8-foot fighting ghost, Elena. Elena just stands there with her spear behind her and stares right at the Greenwood fleet. Inside the S-Devil ship, Lee stares outside, shocked to see all that's going on. By his side, Robert and Seryung are glued to the window, also curious to know how they're still alive. Meanwhile, Elena still turns her back to them and faces the Greenwood fleet, looking to deflect any more attacks from them. It's one woman and her ship against about a dozen ships, but no one seems to be doing anything to attack her. Kim becomes strained, and he wonders why Elena showed up here. Elena just looks right at him and waits for him to make his next move. Inside the Greenwood ship, the captain tells Kim that Elena is using a terraformation-grade shield, and they can penetrate it if they max out the photon cannot output, and asks if they should recharge. Kim tells him there's no need to start a space war just to deal with a cockroach. He tells him that their adversary isn't a person so easily to handle, so he orders that they set up the teleportation so he can go speak with her. As they prepare the teleportation device, he wonders why this monster suddenly showed up here. Meanwhile, Robert tells the other that the 8-foot fighting ghost Elena is a S-class bounty hunter who's so unpredictable that even the leaders of most sects avoid her. He wonders why she's here, and Seryung agrees that she doesn't know, but it seems she saved their lives. She mentions that if Elena hadn't blocked the photon cannon, they'd be atomized by now. Soon after, Kim teleports to Elena's ship to have a civilized discussion with her. He calls her sister Elena and tells her it's been a while since they've seen each other, but Elena doesn't even say a word. She blankly looks at him and keeps quiet, probably wondering where they've met before. Kim continues by asking if she hasn't forgotten him. He decides to introduce himself as her 55th younger brother and reminds her that he greeted her at their mother's birthday 2 years ago. But Elena tells him to get lost. Her words sting Kim, who is just trying to have a conversation, but he decides not to overreact. He formally introduces him as the leader of the Galaxy Division of the 72 Strongholds of Greenwood, and not as her brother, to make things clear that he's not here to play. Kim tells her that telling him to get lost is the same as telling all of Greenwood to get lost, and he cannot accept that. Elena just keeps staring at him and activates her martial art, preparing for a fight. Robert takes notice of this, and he mentions that it looks like they're about to fight. Seryung mentions that it's not going to be easy even for Greenwood because Elena isn't easily touched. She adds that dealing with Elena alone is tough, but it could easily become worse if her mother lioness jumps out from behind too. Robert continues to watch Elena closely and asks what Seryung means by mother lioness. When Kim realizes things are about to go awry, he jokes that Elena is the same as ever, resorting to fists to have a conversation. He raises up his hands and tells her he surrenders, trying to avoid trouble. He tells her to relax because he doesn't want to fight, but Elena still continues in her martial form. Kim thinks to himself that a fight is a great loss, especially for a crap job like this. He suggests that they resolve it peacefully and says he would like to know the reason for her intervention. The Black Tiger asks Elena if the S-Devil bounty hunters are her targets and says they will yield if it overlaps with theirs. Elena just turns around and walks toward the S-Devil ship, telling Kim to get lost one more time. Kim frowns, realizing it's pointless to try to reason with Elena. He continues to wonder why she suddenly showed up for such useless things. Meanwhile, the S-Devil bounty hunters continue to eagerly watch the entire show from their window. Elena walks towards them and connects to their comms. She tells them to hand what they have over or die. Her words resound through the ship's speaker, and those on the ship hear her. Seryung looks puzzled and wonders what's going on now. Robert starts to freak out and wonders why Elena wants to rob them too, since they don't have anything valuable. He asks the captain if she stashed something valuable in the ship without telling them, and even answers himself due to his panic. He repeats that there's nothing here that could attract an S-rank bounty hunter, and it seems Lee figures out something because his eyes widen. Robert and Seryung immediately turn their attention to Lee because he's the only thing that Elena could be worth anything to Elena. Lee just keeps watching the whole thing through the window. Seryung asks him if he knows Elena and questions whether he had a fling with her in the past, and they had a bad breakup before he ran away. Lee tells them Elena is not here because of him. Seryung becomes confused and asks what he means. He turns back and tells them Elena is probably here because of the child behind them. When they turn around, there's no one there, which confuses them. The captain asks him what he means, since there's no one standing there. Lee tells the child to show herself and tells her there's nothing to fear. For a minute nothing happens, and the space remains empty. Suddenly, a young girl starts to materialize out of thin air and her head appears first. Her appearance shocks the bounty hunters, who turn around to take a good look at her. Shortly after, she completely materializes in the ship. Seryung is surprised to see the random girl, and Robert is completely freaked out. The girl just looks at them and doesn't say a word. Seryung becomes alerted and grabs Lee, asking him what's with the little girl and where she came from. Lee tells them that she followed them from the inn. He says she had presence but no form, so he let her be. He says she did a great job to conceal her breathing too, which is such an advanced stealth technique, and it seems martial arts has developed in the current timeline. The girl just remains silent and doesn't say a word to any of them. Sunja tells him that the girl isn't using a stealth technique but is wearing a stealth ring, which allowed her to cloak herself. Sunja mentions that the stealth ring is quantum technology and is really expensive stuff. The captain says she doesn't care if it's expensive or not and walks up to the girl, demanding to know who she is and what her intentions are. Seryung towers over her while the girl looks up at her, and she demands to know why she snuck into their ship. The young girl introduces herself as Yang Hua Rin and looks quite scared. The captain interjects that she didn't ask for her name and demands to know if the people outside are after her and if she's their target. Hua Rin, who is almost in tears, tells her that they're probably after her. Meanwhile, Elena just stands outside and waits for their response. Hua Rin tells them that as long as she's alive, they won't stop coming for her. Robert suddenly loses his mind when he realizes that the girl said her name is Hua Rin, which surprises the captain. Still looking surprised, she asks him if he knows the girl. He starts to act like little fangirl and says it's impossible that he wouldn't recognize her since she's the main vocalist of a band called the Pronosian. Seryung looks at him in surprise and asks him who the Pronosians are since she's never heard of them. It turns out they're not as popular as Robert thought. He exclaims that the Pronosians are the galaxy's top rookie idol duo, and he tries to remind her of a song called Dynamite Doo-Doo-Doo. The song sounds so weird that it's obvious why the Seryung wouldn't know it. Robert explains that she's the main vocalist of the idol group that sang the hit song. He reminds the captain that he plays the song every time and she always dances to it. He quickly does a Google search on her to confirm, and he sees that the girl is truly his idol, and he comments that she's even prettier in person. I wonder if there are space laws against child abuse because Robert needs to be locked up. He checks out a beautiful picture of Hua Rin on his phone and says she's from a place called Mount Hua, which is where he's from. He starts to list out her profile like a creep and says that she's 162 centimeter, 47.4 kilon, has blood type AB, EFSP, and she's allergic to cats. Elena becomes impatient, and she tells them through the comms that this is their last warning, and they have 10 minutes to hand over what's with them. Elena repeats to them that they can either hand her over or she'll kill them all. Her voice gets everyone's attention, and they stop all they're doing and remember they're literally at gunpoint. Robert asks Miss Hua Rin, as he calls her, why all these people are after her, and it looks like he's going to cry because they're about to take his idol away. Se-ryung just keeps quiet as she realizes the uncomfortable decision they have to make. She tells Robert it doesn't matter since they're going to have to surrender the girl regardless. Se-ryung tells the girl that, to be clear, she's an uninvited guest who has nothing to do with them since she snuck into their ship. The captain hesitantly tells her that she needs to leave to avoid causing them any trouble. Roberts exclaims at what the captain said, obviously not cool with the idea of giving the girl away. Se-ryung turns her back to him and insists that she's made her decision as the captain of the ship. Hua Rin just stares at her silently, realizing she's about to be given over to her captors. When they lock Hua Rin in the release chute, Robert mentions to the captain that he doesn't think what they're doing is right, especially because the girl is the main vocalist of Pronosian. Se-ryung tells him they can't protect her because they can barely handle Greenwood, not to mention fighting against the 8-foot demon Elena. She tells him that even if they hold their ground, the fate of the girl wouldn't change at all, but their own fates will because they'll all die. Se-ryung reluctantly but firmly hits the red button to open the ship's door. She confesses to Robert that she's in pain too concerning the decision, but nothing can be done. Hua Rin just stands there waiting for her fate, while the system announces that the door lock has been disengaged and it proceeds to open the gate. Hua Rin just stands there trying to brace up against what happens next. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a hand lands on her shoulder. She is surprised and looks to her right to see Lee standing next to her, and he has the weirdest look on his face as he usually does when he sees crazy things. He looks over at her and reminds her that he had told her not to be worried. She just looks at him in shock, surprised that he'd follow her out when they're up against a monster. Se-ryung looks through glass and sees Lee with Hua Rin, and she loses her mind, wondering how and when he got in there. Robert is equally surprised to see that Lee had gone in with her. Se-ryung quickly hurries to close the gate, wondering how crazy Lee could be. Robert tells her they should wait to see what happens since Lee is pretty strong and may even defeat Elena. Se-ryung asks him if he's crazy and reminds him that it's space out there, and Lee doesn't have a space shield on and won't be able to breathe. As the gates open, tensions rise as Lee follows the girl out, and it looks like he's about to get himself killed by space even before Elena gets to him. The captain orders Sunja to quickly close the gate. Sunja looks surprised but tells her it's too late to close the gate. Se-ryung is shocked to hear that it's too late to do that, so she goes to look through the window. Through the window, she notices Lee and Hua Rin have stepped out of the ship and have gone into space. A look of horror develops on Se-ryung's face as she thinks about how much of an insane nutcase Lee is. As she looks through the window, she remains surprised that he actually went out. Meanwhile, Lee and Hua Rin float right outside the ship and head towards Elena's ship. Hua Rin tightens her grip and tries to brace for what happens next when they get to Elena's ship, and Lee still keeps a hand on her shoulder. She looks back at Lee and thanks him for following her. She tells him their opponents are really strong martial artists, and he needs to be careful. When she turns around, she is surprised to see Lee's bloodshot eyes and expressionless gaze, which means he's unable to breathe. He starts to choke as he tries to contain the little oxygen he has left, and Hua Rin just stares at him. She becomes alarmed and wonders what's wrong with him. She asks him why he's like that and tells him not to tell her he doesn't have a shield. Lee starts to cough, and he starts to throw his arms around, trying to get back to the ship, but it doesn't work. Hua Rin watches him in surprise as she realizes he really doesn't have a shield, and it looks like her savior is about to die. Lee keeps struggling to go back to the ship, but it doesn't work, and Hua Rin just stands there unsure of what to do to help him. Meanwhile, Elena watches the both of them from her ship. Kim and Elena watch in shock, wondering what's going on. Someone suddenly screams out at Lee that it's 300 degrees outside and the pressure would burst his internal organs within 10 seconds, asking why he would go out there without a shield in the first place. It's clear that our guy knows nothing about the rules of space. Lee continues to cough, and his face becomes purple as he waves his hands frantically, trying to get back to the ship. He becomes really purple and swollen and continues to choke. His eyes become red and swollen, and they look like they're about to pop out of their socket. His eyelids suddenly start to close, and it looks like he's fallen unconscious after losing all his oxygen. Suddenly, whoever was talking to him before places their hands around his purple face. It turns out to be Se-ryung, who had come out of the ship to try to save his life. She places a nano-shield on his face and activates it to allow him breathe in space. When he doesn't move, she keeps screaming at him to wake up and breathe. When he still doesn't respond, she becomes scared and asks him what he's doing and why he's not responding. Suddenly, Lee opens his eyes and stares right at her. She lets go of him and breathes a sigh of relief that he's alive. She tells him she thought he was dead and jokingly calls him a bastard. He tells her she's worried for no reason since he's the supreme being of heaven and earth, and there's nothing in this world that can threaten his life. Se-ryung just stares at him, shocked. That was not the thank you she was expecting. Lee looks back at Elena's ship and notices that Hua Rin, who was trying to save, had reached the ship and is walking towards Elena. He asks Se-ryung how he can get to the ship. Inside the ship, Robert also breathes a sigh of relief when he sees that Lee is alive, and he's happy that Se-ryung wasn't too late. Sunja starkly tells him that she was actually very late, and even the greatest master can't withstand space without a shield for less than a minute. She tells him that Lee endured all that for 6 minutes and 13 seconds, and the odd part is that all his organs are still normal. Meanwhile, Se-ryung helps Lee reach the ship, and Hua Rin is surprised to see him behind her. Sunja tells Robert that Lee has by far surpassed every human limit. On the ship, Elena waits for Hua Rin and other accomplices to walk towards her, with Kim still standing behind her even though she told him to get lost. Lee stands in front of them, with Hua Rin a little bit behind him and Se-ryung farther back. Elena just stares at them blankly and doesn't say a word. Se-ryung watches Elena closely and notices that the 8-foot fighting demon's aura is no joke, and it suits her reputation as a fighting maniac. She also notices Kim standing behind Elena and realizes it's even worse for them that Kim from Greenwood is also here. She tells Lee not to cause trouble and walks toward Elena. She tells him she'll handle it and orders that he doesn't intervene. She cooks up the best smile she can and waves at Elena. She tells her it's nice to see her and asks her if she's as healthy as ever. That's so cringe. She continues to babble that she's heard a lot about them and says seeing them in person is even better. She introduces herself as Se-ryung, the leader of the S-Devils, also known as the Blazing Devils. Elena just stares at her blankly, and it's clear she's never heard of her. Greenwood does the same and doesn't say a word. Meanwhile, Hua Rin grabs a hold of Lee's hand out of fear. He notices her hands touch him, so he looks at her over his shoulder. Hua Rin obviously looks petrified, and it looks like she's holding her breath. He tells her that there's no need to be nervous and reminds her that he's here with her. Hua Rin tells him that Elena is not human, obviously petrified at what she can do to her. She continues that Elena is a fighting ghost who has been traveling around the world ever since she was young to look for worthy opponents. Apparently, no one has survived meeting her so far. So much so that she even built a spaceship as a fighting arena just to travel and fight. Lee is impressed by her qualifications and calls Elena a remarkable child. He says she's a young one who is dedicating her heart and soul to martial training, which makes her a rare talent indeed. Hua Rin tells him that's not really what she meant, trying to make it clear that Elena is dangerous. Meanwhile, Se-ryung still continues her cheerful introduction and tells them that whatever the case may be, as fellow Central Plain people, they should talk peacefully. Suddenly, Elena sends a deadly power wave towards her and tells her that she talks with her sword. The impact is so strong that the wave sweeps past Se-ryung's location up until the end of the ship and causes a big explosion. Elena seems to have waved her spear at Se-ryung to eliminate her from the way, since she has no time for cheap talk. Her eyes shine with a bright blue as she waits for the smoke to clear out and find Se-ryung's dead body. She maintains her stand, still waiting for the smoke from the large explosion to clear out. The smoke doesn't clear out for a minute because the move wasn't a threat, but was supposed to kill everyone it crosses. Suddenly, Se-ryung lands back on the ground, as it seems she was quick and smart enough to avoid standing in the way of the energy wave. Se-ryung asks her what she's doing when she had just proposed that they talk. She asks her why she's just swinging her weapon out nowhere. Kim watches the whole thing from behind and thinks to himself that Se-ryung isn't that bad, because even though the attack wasn't full power, it wasn't still an attack easy to dodge. Se-ryung just glares at her, waiting for a response to her question. Elena asks what her name is again, and tells her it would have been better for her not to dodge at all. The 8-foot fighting demon starts to transform and activate her martial arts skill. Kim reasons that Se-ryung should know that her opponent is a mad scorpion that gets more poisonous the more you provoke it, which means she'll just die more painfully. Suddenly, they all hear the sound of a hiccup from inside the smoke that's still behind them, which surprises Se-ryung. The hiccup sound continues, and Kim looks closely to know where it's coming from. It turns out to be Hua Rin who can't handle all the smoke, so Lee tries to pat her in the back to make her better. He tells her she's getting scared over trivial matters and tells her Elena's attacks are just childish pranks. Meanwhile, Kim is shocked by what he's seeing and wonders how that's possible. Lee keeps patting Hua Rin's back, and he tells her the attack may be grand, but it's just a noisy firecracker. He tells her not to get frightened by an empty tin can. Kim considers that Lee must have been standing in the way of the attack judging by his position, and wonders how he's perfectly fine. While Elena is increasing her strength, Lee just helps Hua Rin regulate her breathing and completely ignores the fight going on in front of him. Elena stares at them and continues to increase her internal energy level. She suddenly reaches a higher level, and streaks of bright pink lighting emanate from her body. Our hero still ignores her and tries to help Hua Rin stop her hiccup. Elena just gets confused at why he's ignoring her and stares at him blankly. When Hua Rin calms down, Lee steps forward and addresses Elena as a child. Seryung gets angry that he interrupted her and reminds him that she told him not to get involved. Lee just continues and asks Elena what business she has here. He tells her to speak to him if he has any business with the child, referring to Hua Rin. Kim tries to scan him but realizes he's unidentified and there's no data on him. He also notices his has no internal energy drive equipped. While she scans him, Lee tells Elena that Hua Rin is under his protection, so any business with her goes through him. The Black Tiger is surprised to learn that he has no identification and internal drive and wonders if he's a nameless natural from the outskirts. Lee continues by telling Elena that if she has no business here, she can leave, and he just waves his hands at her to explain his point. While he speaks, a bright light suddenly pops up as Elena responds. Something as bright as a star suddenly appears on their radar. The light is so bright that it catches the attention of Seryung, Kim, and Hua Rin. The light appears on the ship and appears to summon a streak of blue lightning to the top of the ship. It looks like some major power demonstration. Meanwhile, Lee uses his hand to stop Elena's bright spear, which seems to have been used to summon the lightning and bright light for an attack. He stops the spear with his bare hands, and it doesn't seem to harm him at all. Elena is seen holding the spear, and it seems she had launched a frontal attack as a response to him asking her to leave. Meanwhile, our guy stops the spear with one hand while the other is in his pocket. Lee is surprised that she attacked him and asks her if her interest here is to fight with him. Kim's eyes almost pop out of his socket as he can't believe his eyes. He wonders how a person can deflect the fighting ghost Elena's strike with just a palm, especially since he doesn't have any internal energy. Meanwhile, Lee starts to analyze Elena's martial arts skills like he always does. He tells her something is odd about utilizing the radiant sword technique of Diankang sect with a staff and channeling the Shaolin's great Brahma divine art for internal energy. He stares at her expressionlessly and asks how she already has internal energy surpassing 3 cycles when she's so young. He wonders if she had a fortunate encounter. By the way, cycles is what often shows up in Muram martial arts stories where they count their internal energy strength with 60-year cycles. That means that 1 cycle is equal to 60 years worth of energy. While he's talking, Elena starts to increase the rate her internal energy drive is working to 90%, and more lightning starts to come out of her body. Lee stares at her in shock, surprised that she was able to attain 3 cycles, and she's now able to switch her internal energy to Wudang's red sun art. He finally takes his hands out of his pocket and keeps watching her max out her internal energy drive. Right now, she's operating her drive at 95%. Meanwhile, Kim just stares at her and wonders if Elena was always this strong or if something has changed. Lee just looks at her silently, wondering how far she plans to go with this. He asks her if her plan is to go all out and starts to activate his own martial energy as his hands start to burn bright. Suddenly, the ring on Elena's hand starts to shine and tingle. She maintains her attack stance as she continues to increase her energy usage, and the rings continue to shine. Suddenly, the ring lets out a warning sound, which shocks Elena because that's a bad thing. We flash back to a time when Elena is speaking to her mother. Her mother tells her she won't stop her from leaving for the world to chase her dreams. Elena kneels before her mother while she addresses her. Her mother tells her that she'll permit any fight that furthers her training, but she's not allowed to get herself killed. Elena continues to listen while remaining in a submissive position as her mother addresses her. Her mother tells her that she is already strong, and there are less than 10 martial artists that can hurt her throughout all the word, and even they cannot push her to the brink of death. She reaches out for Elena, who bows submissively to her. Her mother reminds her to always remember that she is her mother. She puts a ring on her finger and tells her there is one rule she has to keep if she wants to leave the home. She tells her that if the ring sounds at any time, she must flee no matter what. The sound of the ring means that the opponent is beyond her reach. Her mother tells her that if she ignores the warning, she'll surely die. Back in the present time, the fighting demon collapses in shock when she realizes the consequence of the ring's sound. She stares at Lee, who just seems to be a weak young boy. Elena decides not to back down and continues to fight when she recalls some hurtful people who have put her down with hurtful words when she was much younger. She remembers some of her mother's children asking her what she's hesitating for and telling her to run with her tail between her legs. She recalls them telling her to know her place and asking her what she can do. She hears voices reminding her to hide away and live. She remembers when she was a little kid in the midst of the many children her mother has, who taunted her. She remembers her mother telling her to greet them because they are her siblings. Her mother tells her that they have different fathers, but they are all born from her womb. She recalls standing alone and her mother telling her that they all need to stay close to each other since they share her blood. She remembers some of her mother's kids asking what her name was again. In the present day, Elena decides to stand her ground and fight to the end. She starts to increase her energy drive from 98% to 100% to 110%, and even as far as 120%, which shouldn't be possible. The 8-foot fighting demon generates a great deal of energy, and the entire ship is almost set ablaze by all the power. Lee just frowns as he looks at her, and he seems a bit more alarmed by how far she's going. Se-ryung also watches in surprise, and so does Kim. Our guy waits for her to do her thing, and watches her complete her transformation. Her suit morphs into something new, and it seems she's a totally different being. She looks like some sort of panther, and her hands look unnatural, which means she has morphed into a high-level killing beast. Lee mutters to himself that she had just used a skill that he's never heard of, because he has never seen someone perform a transformation with the Transcendental Awakening skill. He tells himself that it seems martial arts have evolved so much as time has passed. While he's thinking, Elena leaps off the ground and launches towards him. Meanwhile, Lee feels that martial arts have advanced a little bit too much. He doesn't make any move, and just stands here with his hands in his pocket, even up until Elena gets right in his face and starts to swing her weapon. As she swings at him, he dodges it quickly and mentions that the move is the chaotic storm sword technique of the Ime sect. She makes another move that looks like a spiral of fire, and he still continues to dodge. He identifies the move as the sun and moon twin wheels of the Kunlun sect. The 8-foot fighting demon starts to get angry and increases her energy level to 125%. She lands several attacks at once, which our guy still dodges and identifies as the sun-piercing spear technique and the falling sunblade technique of the Diankang sect. Elena decides to amp things up a bit and goes to 140%. She creates a swirling fire tornado attack, but Lee just bends backwards and easily dodges that too, recognizing it as the dog-beating stick technique and the drunken 8 immortal steps of the Beggars sect. While still crouched, Lee frowns as he wonders how she's also able to add the 4,000 red needles of the esoteric sect. Elena is on fire today, so she goes up to 170% since she never loses a fight. She now comes at him with 2 iron claws and explosive energy in her hands, and our guy just jumps backward to dodge her attacks because he's on the defensive. He shouts at her that it's enough already and waves his hand in front of him. The weight of his attack lets out a stream of fire that goes right towards Elena, who was jumping towards him. The attack is so strong that a massive explosion that covers the entire area of the ship is triggered, and it looks like everybody's going to die from this one. The weight of the smoke is so heavy this time, and Lee just stands to see what happened to Elena. Suddenly, something comes out of the smoke that catches his eye. Even Kim is freaked out by what they see, and it looks like he's not seen something this freaky in all his years at the job. Hwarin and Se-ryung equally watch in astonishment. It turns out to be Elena, who now has about 8 arms, each wielding a weapon. She's gone freaky with this stuff, all right. She looks like one of those Indian gods and just levitates right in the air, armed with 8 bright swords. Suddenly, she rushes toward Lee, hoping to cut him in all ways possible. Now, she's at 190%, and it seems she's not going to stop. She launches an overhead attack at him and comes down in a blaze of fire, but he just stands there and stares at her. She rushes towards him in fierce determination, and the metallic armor seems to have covered up her entire body, making her almost unhuman. Lee just looks up and frowns at how far she's taking this, hoping she'd just stop. Elena does the opposite of that and continues to move towards him at full speed. He thinks to himself that her talent is admirable, but she's crossed the line of righteousness. As she continues to rush towards him, Lee reasons that her awakening exposes wounds and desires, which means she's just being consumed by herself. He keeps watching her come towards him and believes that she's carrying many inner demons. Suddenly, Lee generates an explosive power in his hand and thinks to himself that if she goes any further, he'd have no choice but to kill her to stop her. Meanwhile, Hwarin stands behind him and watches Elena come towards them. Out of our guy's hands, a strange celestial sword emerges, and he tells himself that he promised to protect Hwarin. Se-ryung and Kim are shocked when they realize that Lee is wielding something known as a heart sword. The 8-foot fighting demon doesn't stop and ignores the sword in his hands, hell-bent on sending him to his grave. It looks like only one person will live to tell this tale. When she almost reaches where he is, he angrily strikes her with the sword and tells her to stop. The energy released is so massive that it almost blinds those who are watching the fight, and even Robert struggles to see due to the brightness of the light. An explosion is seen over Elena's ship from Robert's point of view. The explosion from the impact of the heart sword is so powerful that it splits the entire ship into several pieces. The entire ship suddenly explodes in space in the presence of the Greenwood fleet. The explosion of the ship is so great that it looks like a bright star from afar. From the main Greenwood ship, the captain watches in horror as he sees the explosion from where his boss is. The explosion is so strong that there was no way that Kim could have survived it. Suddenly he hears a cough close by. It turns out that Kim had teleported back just in time before the ship exploded. Kim screams out Lord Cheju's name, and he looks quite bloody and battered. He tells the captain that he's not dead, and Cheju tries to help him stand properly. Kim rests on a wall and looks through the window to see the remains of the ship that had just exploded. He tells Cheju that he would have torn to pieces if he had teleported just 0.1 seconds late. The fire from the ship's explosion is still seen throughout space, and bits from the ship float around. Standing on one large piece that broke away from Elena's ship, Seryung asks Lee if he's insane because they could have been killed. She asks him if in the past, people in the middle of the ocean ever set their own ship on fire just because they were angry, and tells him he should have shown some restraint. Lee, who has some blood coming out of his mouth, struggles to speak and tells her restraint wasn't an option. Seryung rushes to his side and asks him if he's hurt when she sees the blood. Kim just continues to look up, and he tells her that he faced a much stronger power than he had anticipated. Seryung looks up to where his gaze is fixed and realizes what he's looking at. Floating in space, along with all the rubble from the ship, is Elena's naked body and broken weapon. The captain asks him if she's dead since she's just floating there and not moving a muscle. With his gaze still fixed on Elena's floating body, he tells her that she's not dead just yet. Suddenly, a strange woman appears and retrieves Elena's unconscious body. Lee tells her that the impact of the sword didn't kill the 8-foot ghost, because a stronger force than he expected protected her, referring to this strange woman. The strange woman looks at Elena with sympathy in her eyes and covers up her nakedness. She has an angelic beauty about her, and she continues to stare at Elena's body in gloom. Suddenly, a light from a large overhead ship appears over them, and the woman takes up the 8-foot fighting ghost. Seryung immediately recognizes the woman as the West Heaven Sword Matron, and Kim recognizes her as his mother. It appears that this must be the mother who had given Elena the ring that she refused to pay attention to. The West Heaven Sword Matron carries the body into her ship and doesn't say anything to any of the onlookers. Lee just stares at her in surprise, still wielding the Heart Sword. Inside the West Heaven Sword Matron's ship, we see a pool of green chemicals. Inside this liquid, Elena's unconscious body floats, and it appears that the liquid is supposed to help her recuperate from her injuries. Her mother stands in front of the tube, staring at her, hoping that she becomes conscious soon enough. Her mother has a very distraught look on her face as she continues staring at Elena, who is inside the tube. Shortly after, Kim, Seryung, Hwa-rin, and Lee appear right behind her, and it seems she had summoned them to have a chat. Kim bows down before his mother as a show of submission. Meanwhile, Seryung holds Hwa-rin's hand to comfort her because she appears to be very afraid. Kim tells his mother that he didn't know she was coming and asks her to punish him for his lack of loyalty and filial piety. She doesn't even let him conclude his speech and tells him this is not his place to intervene, making it clear that this isn't the room for little children like him to talk. She tells him to act as if he isn't here, which really hurts Kim, who remains submissive to his mother. She walks up to Lee and makes a sign of respect with her hands, introducing herself as the West Heaven Sword Matron. Kim is terribly shocked to see his mother showing respect, and Seryung is equally shocked to see her showing an ounce of courtesy. The West Heaven Sword Matron apologizes to Lee for violating the dueling code of martial arts by rudely intervening in their duel, because she was driven by familial affections. She tells him she can cut off her arm as an apology if he so wishes, but Lee tells her there'll be no need for that. He asks her if Elena is her daughter, and notices Elena is in a tube. Seryung walks up to Lee and whispers to him that he is talking to the West Heaven Sword Matron and tells him to speak more respectfully. The West Heaven Sword Matron responds to him that Elena is indeed her daughter. Lee responds to her that it's settled it in that case because family takes precedence over the dueling code. Meanwhile, in the room, there seem to be many other tubes, like the one Elena is in, that are empty. Seryung whispers to him again and begs him to speak politely to the woman because she is one of the 5 immortals. Seryung continues by telling him that the West Heaven Sword Matron's temper is so bad that she can split you in 2 just by glaring at you. While she's talking, something that shocks her happens, and she shuts her mouth. Suddenly, the West Heaven Sword Matron goes on her knees to make obeisance to Lee, and this really shocks Seryung. Outside the ship, several ships from the 72 strongholds of Greenwood are still seen outside waiting for Kim. Later on, the West Heaven Sword Matron has a private discussion with our guy at the top of her ship. She tells him that her daughter's consciousness has not yet recovered, so she doesn't know the exact reason she attacked their ship or Hwa-rin. She tells him that she was only able to confirm that Elena passed through Mount Hua before she came there, so she was most likely commissioned to find Hwa-rin by a client while she was in Mount Hua. Lee just stares at the space around them absently and doesn't say a thing. She tells him that she noticed that the martial art that he had just demonstrated is the Demon Heart Sura sword technique and refers to him as a revered master. She asks him if he has any relation to the Heavenly Demon Sect. Lee doesn't give her a direct answer, and he tells her he doesn't know. He says there was a deep connection in the past, but time has passed, and that's not certain anymore. He continues by saying that time corrodes even the strongest bonds as if they were iron. Meanwhile, Hua Rin and Seryung wait nearby in another part of the ship. Our guy continues by saying that time also dissolves connections that are dearer than life itself, and Kim eavesdrops on the conversation from inside the ship. The West Heaven Sword Matron just stares at him blankly, not knowing what to make of him. She says within herself that he is indeed an extraordinary figure. His chi, internal energy, and martial arts are all perfectly refined and have no trace of artificiality. She wonders how that's possible since such a state was only achievable during the peak period of martial arts. Kim doesn't pay her any attention but keeps staring deep into space. The West Heaven Sword Matron keeps looking at him and considers that he appears to be in his early 20s and wonders if this is some sort of rejuvenation. She breaks the ice and asks Lee if she can make a request, still referring to him as the revered master. Lee speaks out her mind and asks if she's proposing a serious fight, and it surprises her that he was able to detect what she was thinking. He continues by telling her that she may be very polite, but every word she says is dripping with murderous intent, like a sword sharpened against a flint that is getting sharper by the minute. The West Heaven Sword Matron commends his sharp ears for being able to catch her small whispers. He tells her that he's never refused a challenge, but he reminds her that if they fight, one of them is bound to die. The only issue is that the one left standing will be severely injured because something too strong has no room to bend and will break. The West Heaven Sword Matron starts to awaken her internal energy and accepts her fate, still hoping for a chance to fight. Seryung notices the matron's awakening and becomes worried that trouble is brewing. While the matron is still awakening, Lee asks her if they have any compelling reason to fight while still looking at the scenery outside the ship. The West Heaven Sword Matron is caught off guard by his question. He glances at her and tells her that they can fight if they have reason to in the future, because he's more preoccupied with his desire to see more of the world right now. She stops her awakening, intrigued by the way he speaks. She decides to stop her transformation altogether and accept his offer. Meanwhile, the West Heaven Sword Matron's ship as well as the Greenwood fleet are seen all over that area of space. Moments later, the S-Devils leave the vicinity, as it appears that Lee and the West Heaven Sword Matron are done with their discussion. Later, Kim and his mother have a discussion, and she learns from him that the kill request was made by the Heavenly Demon Sect to prevent some secret from leaking. Kim, who still kneels in submission, reaffirms what he had just told her about the Heavenly Demon Sect. She tells him she can't seem to wrap her head around why the Heavenly Demon Sect would want to kill those in the S-Devil ship, and what secret they wouldn't want to be leaked out. She mentions that Lee clearly possessed the supreme martial arts of the Heavenly Demon Sects, and it doesn't make any sense that they would want him dead since he is one of them. Furthermore, she reasons that it doesn't make any sense that they would hire Greenwood to do their dirty bidding. Kim informs her that there's been recent information that the Heavenly Demon's Red Wolf Squad was annihilated by an unknown entity, and suggests that they could be related to these people. His mother tells him that there's no need to overthink. She explains that whatever the situation may be, his imagination won't be able to deduce it, and this stings Kim. She orders him to thoroughly track their movements and report to her, since that should be enough for him to handle. Kim boasts that they from Greenwood pride themselves on being the best in the world at tracking, and he informs her that he belongs to Greenwood's command. His mother just looks at him and doesn't say a word. Kim also remains on his knees, expecting her response. She tells him that she will trust him to track them, and tells him not to interfere in their business. She adds that she wouldn't want her child to get hurt, and the Black Tiger's eyes widen as he hears her words of maternal care. He looks behind him and mutters the word, mother. And it's clear that all of the West Heaven Sword Matron's kids seem to have some abandonment issues from their mother's end, since she has so many children. Before she leaves the room, she asks him one last question. He eagerly turns back to hear the question, and she asks him what his name is, and Kim just stares at her in shock. Meanwhile, in the S-Devil ship, Hua Rin hides behind Lee when Seryung shouts at her and demands to know what mess she has gotten herself into this time. Seryung looks really angry, and you can almost see fumes coming out of her nostrils as she speaks. She asks Hua Rin what she did to get involved with Greenwood, the 8-foot fighting ghost Elena, and worse of all, the Heaven Sword Matron. She asks to know if Hua Rin had flipped the world upside down before coming here. Outside the ship, the vast expanse of space seems calm, as there are no ships or seasoned martial artists trying to kill each other. Hua Rin looks gloomy and sincerely apologizes for all the trouble and confesses that she also doesn't know why they're all after her. She tells them that after she finished her tour, she returned to Mount Hua, her hometown, and everything was suddenly different. They sit on the table to talk, and Sunja prepares a mountain of hot dogs for Lee to devour. Hua Rin tells them that when she got back to her hometown, the people from her hometown were suddenly trying to kill her. She explains that she ran away from her town all the way to this place. Meanwhile, Lee speedily stuffs his mouth with like 7 hot dogs, and at the same time he grabs another 4 with his other arm, clearly ignoring the conversation. Seryung says she has no idea what Hua Rin is talking about and turns around to ask Sunja if she has any idea either. Sunja looks just as confused and says she also finds it hard to grasp. Hua Rin just keeps silent, unsure of how else to explain her dilemma to them, while Li spills pieces of meat everywhere due to his frantic eating. Suddenly, one of the pieces of meat mistakenly enters Hua Rin's mouth, and she tries to bring it out, but she becomes shocked when Robert slams his hands on the table, demanding to know if she just mentioned Mount Hua. He angrily pushes Seryong aside and asks if she is referring to the Mount Hua planet, which is also his hometown. The girl mistakenly swallows the meat caught in her mouth, and it starts to choke her, which makes her cough. But Li doesn't even notice at all because he's eating like a beast. Robert demands that she immediately tell him what happened at Mount Hua, while Hua Rin continues to cough. Watching the conundrum, Sunja just frowns and mentions that humans are utterly abnormal. Meanwhile, in the West Heaven Sword Matron's ship, we see that one of her big tubes seems to have been shattered. Out of the shattered tube, Elena's now conscious body falls to the ground, and she begins to cough in the presence of the West Heaven Sword Matron. Her mother just looks at her worriedly and leaves her to cough and come to her senses. She immediately asks her what happened to her on Mount Hua, but Elena continues to cough profusely. Elena, who is still struggling to catch her breath, finally bears herself up and glances at her mother. Next up, we return to the Wild Crane Inn, where Li had met with the Red Wolf Squad. Inside the inn, the keeper of the inn, Wang the 18th, watches footage of Li's encounter with Elena. He watches on screen as she makes her moves, and he dodges them. He also watches Li use the Heart Sword when he gets tired of dodging her attacks, which causes the explosion that ripped through space. Wang watches with excitement with his guards behind him, who also watch in great surprise. He recalls his conversation with Seryong and recalls when she asked him how much a full collection of 2,000-year-old martial arts manuscripts is worth. He recalls that she had said they were all originals and were S rank. In the present, he is shocked to learn she was telling the truth and he had passed on a deal that could be potentially worth a fortune. We return to the Heavenly Demon Sect District 32. The footage of Elena launching towards Li, who just stands there, is played on the screen. Soon after, Elena is seen trying to land multiple strikes on Li, which he dodges seamlessly. A look of horror develops on the face of the District 32 commander, Zhang Ritak. He watches in horror and asks what's going on as he sees Li wielding the Heart Sword to finish off Elena. From behind him, the West Heaven Sword Matron asks what he thinks of the footage, and says the martial art seems to be quite familiar, and he looks back towards her. She stares at him and waits for his, hoping that he'll pick that the martial art is related to the demon sect. Zhang acknowledges that it is a level of martial art prowess never seen or heard of before, but he tells her he doesn't understand what she means by saying it's familiar. The Sword Matron just stares at him blankly, wondering if he truly doesn't know anything about the new person that just showed up on their radar. Zhang also stares at her, standing on his point that the martial art doesn't seem familiar. The Sword Matron thinks to herself that it really seems that he doesn't have a clue that the martial art that Li used is connected to their heavenly demon sect. She asks him why he decided to pursue our guy and why he had involved Greenwood. The commander tells her that is an internal matter of their sect, and it's not something that she should concern herself with even though she is the Sword Matron who rules over the West Heaven Cosmic Zone. He frowns sternly and stands on his point, but the left side of his neck is suddenly cut. John suffers a cut to his neck and it starts to bleed. Meanwhile, the Sword Matron wields her sword, and it's clear that she had managed to cut him from where she's standing in the twinkle of an eye. She suddenly develops an evil aura around her and continues to hold out her sword, implying that she'd get the information whether he wants to give it or not. Zhang, on the other hand, has the fabric around his neck area cut and only suffers surface damage to his skin, which means that she could have gone deeper if she wanted to, but had decided to spare his life. The commander places a hand over his neck to stop the bleeding, and asks her if she's declaring war against their demon sect. She playfully asks him if he thinks that she of all people would fear bloodshed. He looks at her, still holding his neck to stop the blood from coming out. He reasons that she's a woman who, driven by obsession with martial arts, even devoured her own children. Zhang decides that she's not one who considers profit or loss to herself when she pursues her obsession for martial arts. It's clear where Elena got her passion from. The Sword Matron's sword starts to burn with a bright red fire and it looks like it's about go to down. She begins to awaken, and a purple flame covers the entire room, and she asks him if he will answer or choose to die. He tells her that the choice is obvious, because even if all the 1076 martial artists of District 32 attack her together, they can't surpass the strength of the Sword Matron. So it's clear that he has chosen to die. He activates his own martial power and generates fire in both his hands and proposes that they begin the fight even though he knows it'll lead to his doom. He tells her she better hurry if she plans to cut down all 1076 of them. The West Heaven Sword. Moran just smile at him, intrigued by his resolve. She thinks about how people say that the Heavenly Demon Sect gets tougher each passing day, so she decides to let it go. She tells him that the method used by the unknown person that they're dealing with is the Demon Heart Sura sword technique. Zhang, who is still planning on fighting with a murderous intent in his eyes, is shocked to hear her mention that the martial art is connected to the demon sect. He asks what she means by that. The sword matron repeats that the heart sword that cut down her daughter was the Demon Heart Sura sword technique, second in the heavenly demon sect's martial hierarchy. The commander is sincerely surprised to hear her assertion, and tells her that can't be possible because the Demon Heart Sura sword technique has been a lost martial art for thousands of years. He says that it exists only in legends, and no one in their sect has ever practiced it. The sword matron responds to that by saying that it's not her problem that his knowledge is lacking. She tells him that she's told him what she knows, so she asks him again why he chose to pursue the fellow they're talking about. She refers to the image of Li on the screen and asks why he chose to pursue him. Zhang keeps quiet and stares at her for a while, contemplating whether he should divulge the information. He tells her that they weren't after Li. He points to Hua Rin and says she was the one they were chasing after. Meanwhile, in a place called the Talaviatra orbiting star system, the S-Devils come to Robert and Hua Rin's home planet, the Mount Hua planet. They fly into its atmosphere and proceed to land on its surface. They reach Hua Rin's county, called Hua Hum County, and the place looks like ancient Japan and looks pretty peaceful. The county looks pretty much deserted because all the shops are abandoned and not a single person is seen everywhere. No matter where you look, all the lights are on and the homes look clean, but no one can be seen. When they enter the planet, Seryung asks Hua Rin what's wrong and why the land is completely empty. She asks why no one is there, wondering if there's some sort of holiday. Robert looks around in horror and says he doesn't think so because all the store doors are open. They soon touch down and look through the camera and see all the stores open with several market utensils on the ground unattended to. Sunja tells them that the town has over 10,000 inhabitants, but she can't seem to detect any signs of life at all. Robert becomes frantic again and starts to shake the captain. He insists that something must have surely happened and says they should go down quickly. He says something terrifying must have happened, and everyone surely died or fled. Seryung tries to calm him down and asks why he's so agitated all of a sudden. He tells her that Mount Hua is his hometown and screams that they have to save Mount Hua. Seryung tries to get out of his grip and starts to cough. She tells him to let go because she can't breathe. While she tries to make him let go of her clothes, tears drop from Hua Rin's eyes as she looks through her deserted homeland. Hua Rin cries deeply, while Li just stares at the scenery of the planet. He asks her what's going on and tells her to speak up if she knows anything about why the place is deserted. She hesitates before she talks, and it seems she knows quite a bit about it. Before she can talk, Sunja tells them that she has detected a life signal. Sunja's words catch their attention, and they quickly turn to hear what she has to say. The android tells them that the life signal is coming from the Jaha Pavilion, inside Mount Hua's main headquarters, judging from its location. Robert stops struggling with Seryung when he recognizes the Jaha Pavilion and mentions that the Jaha Pavilion is where the leader of the Mount Hua sect resides. Sunja affirms what he said, but tells him that the life signal is strong, but seems to be coming from just one person. Hua Rin doesn't say anything and just keeps quiet, and it seems she knows who the person is. Later on, they successfully reach the Jaha Pavilion at night. The building looks grand, but currently seems eerie and covered in smoke. They all stand at the entrance and wonder what the eerie-looking building could possibly hold. Seryung looks back when she hears a loud sound. It turns out to be Robert, who is wearing some sort of Iron Man suit, and she asks him what he's doing. He tells her that whoever is in the Jaha Pavilion is part of those who touched his homeland, and he doesn't plan to forgive any of them. Seryung just asks him if his combat suit is still functional. She mentions that she thought he stashed it away in the warehouse as soon as he got discharged and later sold it off. Robert insists that once a Special Force soldier, always a Special Force soldier, and boasts that he always oil and polishes the suit every day. When they get closer to a tunnel opening in front of the pavilion, the captain asks Sunja if the signal is still there through the comms. She asks her if she's still detecting a response just to be sure they aren't chasing after the wind. Sunja responds that the life signal is getting stronger and tells them to be careful because it doesn't seem to be human. Seryung takes note of the information and suggests that they deploy a reconnaissance drone first to help them identify what it is before they go in. Nearby, Robert exclaims when he hears that what they're after might not be human. Before the captain can finish her statement, Robert rushes into the tunnel, screaming out that he'll kill whatever it is, and threatens the monster to come out because the special forces are here. Seryung and Li just watch him in surprise, not sure what to say. The captain mentions how odd it is that he's causing a ruckus just because they're in his hometown. She decides that there's no need to send a drone since Mr. Patriot must have alerted the target with all his noise, so they proceed to the opening, and she tells the rest of them to stay alert. Just before they step into the tunnel, a pool of fire comes out of the tunnel and heads right for them. Seryung notices the bright light and is shocked, wondering what it could be. The stream of fire issues from the tunnel and burns all that's in its path. Hopefully, they're not going against a dragon. The fire is so strong that it runs past the tunnel in front of the Aha Pavilion and reaches across to the houses that were built in front of it. Soon after, the stream of fire retracts back into the tunnel, and everything calms down again. Se-ryung is shocked by what had just happened and remains speechless. Hwa-rin is also shocked that such a great inferno has just brushed past them, and they're alive. How they're alive is the funny part. Both ladies are seen pressed towards each other to avoid the fire, and the position is quite embarrassing. It turns out Lee had quickly carried both of them on his legs and created a shield that blocked the fire to keep them alive. Lee doesn't even notice their compromising position and looks deeper into the tunnel, wondering where the fire came from. Se-ryung snaps to her senses and looks behind him, asking where the fire suddenly came from. Our guy suggests they move forward and drop Se-ryung on her back, but helps Hwa-rin to her feet. Se-ryung drops on her back and lets out a groan of pain. When they move forward, they run into Robert, whose suit seems to have been badly burned, and they wonder if he's dead or alive. Se-ryung moves closer to him and asks him to say something if he's alive, but he just remains frozen as if he's been roasted to death. The captain signals Sunja through the comms and asks her to scan him to know if he's still alive. Sunja runs a scan on the system and assures them that he's fine because, fortunately for him, his combat suit did its job. Se-ryung wonders why he's not talking if he's still alive, and Sunja tells her that he's probably just scared out of his mind. The captain exclaims when she realizes the problem and gives Robert more time to become conscious. Meanwhile, Lee checks out the tunnel and wonders where the sudden fire came from. When he looks up, he sees a streak of pink lightning, which catches his attention. As he looks closer, he notices something littered around the end of the tunnel. It turns out to be small pink flower petals that are making these streaks of light. The petal lands on our guy's hair and shatters due to how fragile it is, which puzzles him. Suddenly, the entire tunnel fills up with thousands of other flower petals out of nowhere. Moving forward, they see that the flower petals are emanating from a man who seems to be sitting down on a throne. The man turns out to be the leader of the Mount Hua sect, and he just sits on his throne with his eyes closed, enveloped with strong energy, and he seems unaware of their presence. Lee frowns as he looks at him, still wondering what's going on. Se-ryung also sees him and asks Sunja if the man they're looking at is the source of the life-form signal. Sunja tells her that he is the source, and he must be the leader of Mount Hua. Sunja introduces him as Flourishing Blossom Sword Sovereign Yeongjoksan, and this shocks Se-ryung. She looks at him more closely and is shocked to learn that the man is the Sword Sovereign of Mount Hua. Lee reaches out and catches one of the plum blossom flowers and looks at it closely. He says that the fact that the plum blossoms opened from the heat means that he's achieved the peak of the plum blossom heavenly fragrance heart technique. As the plum blossom shatters in his hands and gives out a purple color, he wonders why they have bloomed in purple. He reasons that this means that the plum blossom heavenly fragrance technique has mixed with another technique called the purple mist divine heart. Meanwhile, Yang just sits there and ignores their presence, with streaks of pink and purple light coming out of his body. Meanwhile, Hwa-rin stares at him with tears rolling down from her eyes. Oddly enough, she calls him Dad. It appears that the Sword Sovereign, who seems to be completely unaware of his surroundings, is Hwa-rin's father. Lee just stands there staring at Yang, and he thinks to himself that this situation doesn't look good at all. Yang sits on his throne, oblivious to their presence, and it seems he's in his own zone. Se-ryung walks up to Lee and asks what the problem is. He tells her that the Plum Blossom Heavenly Fragrance Heart technique embodies extreme yang, while the Purple Mist Divine Art embodies extreme yin. Thus, even the elders of Mount Hua can only choose one to master. He tells her to consider that extreme yang is fire and extreme yin is water, and asks her what she thinks will happen when they mix. He answers his own question by saying that when a martial artist's desires surpass their limits, a demon takes root in their heart, and that person is no longer human. Lee starts to summon the heart sword like he did before he defeated Elena, and it looks like he plans to take out Yang because he's been taken over by a demon. He tells Se-ryung to take the others and flee because the fight won't be an easy one. As he awakens into his energy state and a pure aura fills the air, he tells her that even he can't guarantee their safety in such a fight. Before he can strike, Hwa-rin rushes towards Yang and calls him Dad. Se-ryung shouts and tells her to stop moving close to the man, but Hwa-rin just ignores her warnings. Meanwhile, Lee prepares to strike when he realizes it's too late to get them into safety. Sunja watches with surprise on her face, wondering what's to become of the girl. On the clock, it's just 2 seconds from 18 sound, and Sunja realizes that the girl and everyone there are in danger. Meanwhile, Hwa-rin ignores all their warnings and just reaches out to hug her father, who's still spilling out streaks of lightning out of his body. The clock on the screen in front of Sunja shows that it's just 1 second from 18. Inside the tunnel, the girl hugs her father, and it seems the energy emanating from him doesn't affect her at all. Se-ryung's eyes widen as she stares at her, but our guy just watches to see what will happen. Suddenly, the blossoms and the light around the throne turn a bright yellow and begin to disappear. Yang gets up from his seat and hugs Hua Rin, and it seems he can now sense her presence. He looks down at her with paternal love and holds her head as he embraces her. The captain is more than freaked out and asks what the heck is going on and why the man suddenly switched from a terrifying monster to a loving father. Sunja tells them over the comms that this is normal because the world has returned to normal. Inside the ship, Sunja watches the screen in disbelief, and Se-ryung asks her what she's talking about. The android tells her that everything is normal now. On the screen, it shows that the time is a few seconds past 18 Rao. Meanwhile, in the city, people seem to be walking around like nothing had happened. Sunja keeps looking through their cameras and she tells them that she sees people on the streets. She keeps looking everywhere, and it seems that people have started to move around in all the places that seemed deserted before. There are couples walking around, people walking around to buy things, and many more. Sunja explains that the people who disappeared seem to have returned. Meanwhile, Yang still continues hugging Hua Rin. Se-ryung continues watching the scenery in front of her, and she can't wrap her head around the fact that every missing person seems to have appeared at once. Lee, on the other hand, doesn't seem a bit impressed, and he's seen to be watching with a frown.
This is the new Dell AI PC with Intel inside. It helps you save time, because it does your...
Lee, on the other hand, doesn't seem a bit impressed, and he's seen to be watching with a frown. The people walk around the town at the dawn of the day, and they don't seem to be aware that nobody was in the town just a few minutes ago. Robert, Se-ryung, and Sunja go have a sit in one of the restaurants, and they seem disturbed by all that is going on. Se-ryung asks Sunja why she hadn't detected any life form, and asks her if the bioscanner was malfunctioning. Sunja, who's having a drink, tells her that they checked it together, and they had confirmed that the scanner was normal. The android connects to the scanner again and confirms that it's still normal even as they speak. As she scans the people, she notices that something is off about the people around them. She tells the bounty hunters that the people here all have their internal energy drained. Both adults and children don't seem to show any internal energy reading. Robert says that shouldn't be so much of a problem since the people look all right, but Se-ryung still feels quite uncomfortable. He tells them it's fine since they had thought they were dead before, but have now found out they're alive. He looks behind him and says he's hungry, so he decides to order some food. Robert waves to the attendant in the restaurant and tries to signal her to take his order. Se-ryung tells him that he was making such a fuss all just a while ago, and now he doesn't seem to care anymore. The waiter starts to walk towards them, so Robert mentions to them that she's coming over to take their orders. When she comes close to them, Robert tells her that he'll have a double serving of noodles and a large special dong pork. He suddenly notices something odd and stops talking. The server walks right past him, and she doesn't seem to pay attention to a word he said. Robert freezes with his hand still in the air, wondering if she just has bad customer service or she didn't hear him. He looks back and notices her attending to other customers and asks why she walked past him and wonders if she was too busy to hear him. When she heads back towards them, he's relieved she's coming back, so he shouts to her that he would like to make an order. The lady walks past him again and doesn't say a word, and it seems like he's not there. Robert freezes again with his hands in the air, and this time he just opens his mouth in confusion. He suddenly exclaims, wondering what is going on and why the waiter keeps ignoring him. Sunja helps him understand and tells him that it's not that she didn't hear him, but it's like the people around them can't see them at all. Sunja explains that no one in the restaurant has ever stopped to look at them. Even when they're right in front of them, they still pass by as if they're part of the scenery. She explains that they're not aware of their presence at all, and it's like they never existed in the first place. Se-ryung has a bad feeling about this, but she says she doesn't want to get involved and covers herself up because of the cold. Meanwhile, Yang is seen having his early morning tea right after he leaves the spot where he hugged Hua Rin. He pours some tea from his teapot into small cups and sits down to enjoy the morning. He soon drinks the tea and enjoys himself, even while there are guests in front of him. Nearby, Hua Rin explains to Lee that he's not someone who would rudely drink his tea alone while guests are in front of him. She calls out to him in fear, but he doesn't seem to be aware of their presence at all. She tells him that he can't see them. Meanwhile, Yang continues to sip and enjoy his tea quietly. Hua Rin tells Lee that the strange thing is that he does all his work and tasks normally. She says he goes for inspections, eats his meals, and tends to his gardens like he always does. She says that he does these things at exactly the same times every day, like a wind-up doll. Lee walks up to him and he looks freaked out. He waves in front of Yang's face, but he doesn't respond, so Hua Rin tells him it's no use because he can't see them. She tells him he must be careful because something can go wrong if you prevent him from doing his repetitive routine. Lee, who didn't hear that part, drags Yang's cup out of his hands. Hua Rin panics and screams out that what he did was a really bad idea and tells him to get out of the way. Lee, who is surprised to see her reaction, does not notice the Sword Sovereign swinging his sword towards his neck for interrupting him. Before the Sword Sovereign makes a full swing, our guy, who's always quick on his feet, bends backwards and dodges the attack. He looks up at the sword swing past him and realizes that it's about to go down. As he looks up towards Yang, who quickly directs his sword downwards and attempts to pin him to the ground with it, Lee quickly rolls out of the way and avoids several quick movements of the sword's edge towards him. The Sword Sovereign moves at lightning-fast speed, but fortunately, our guy is equally as fast. The Sword Sovereign moves so fast that it seems that he's cutting with several swords at once, and Lee doesn't have choice but to keep dodging. Yang creates an energy force in his hands and attempts to release it towards Lee, who is standing right in front of him. Lee becomes angry and tells him it's enough, rushing to meet him with his own energy force because it's dangerous to let him release it. Our guy rams his palms towards Yang's palm to stop the effect of his martial technique and prevent an explosion. The force released from both energy sources is so strong that it creates a great wave of explosion that rips through the room and almost injures Hua Rin. As she watches the fight, she screams out to Lee to stop the fight. The weight of the explosion throws Yang backwards into the smoke, but Lee still stands his ground. Yang gets back up with murderous intent in his eyes, and his entire body releases flashes of lightning. To think this is all because of a cup of tea. Our guy notices that he's showing the reaction of exhibiting extreme yang and yin together like he did in the tunnel. Hua Rin just shouts that the only way to stop him from continuing his rampage is to return his teacup to him. Lee keeps looking at him, and he mentions that when a person tries to surpass an impossible limit, their body cannot withstand it. Thus, the principle should be that the person falls into inner demons. Their body bursts like a balloon, and they end up shredded in pieces. As he watches Yang increase in energy and walk towards him, Lee wonders that what he's doing should clearly be an impossible realm to tread in, and he should have died. Yang keeps talking towards him, with a bearing fire around him as well as purple and pink light. Suddenly, a large plum blossom flower shows up again out of nowhere. The flower's pink exterior is corrupted with a purple color, and it moves before Yang, who is walking towards him, with a whirlwind around him. Lee wonders that he seems to be a human, yet he's not a human at the same time, and he wonders why his situation is peculiar and what the story behind this is. Hua Rin screams out to him again and tells him to hurry because waiting for too long can be dangerous. The menacing and deadly-looking flower closes in on Lee, who still remains crouched. Hua Rin watches the whole thing in dread, hoping that he's able to return the cup quickly. Lee suddenly brings out the cup and prepares to throw. He swings backward so he can get enough traction to reach Yang. He soon throws it with great force, and the cup goes flying towards Yang. The cup flies towards the large and dreadful-looking plum blossom. The cup heads right for its center, and it seems that the flower will stop its movement. Fortunately, the cup tears through the center of the flower and goes right through it. As it tears through the flower explodes into a dark purple gas. Hua Rin watches in anticipation, hoping that the cup will reach her dad and all the fighting will stop. Suddenly, Yang catches the cup in midair, and it seems that was what he was fighting for all along. After the Sword Sovereign retrieves the cup, the pink fire and lightning around him start dimming quickly. The energy display around him stops after he catches the cup, and it looks like things are returning to normal. Yang returns back to his previous state and continues with his tea drinking in his small chair. He pours some more tea into the cup like he did previously and ignores the two people in the room like they're not there. Lee frowns as he looks at him, realizing that one of them almost died just because of a teacup. Hua Rin looks slightly relieved to see that things have been resolved. Soon after, night comes and everything becomes dark again. Hua Rin tells Lee about how she returned home after she finished her interstellar tour half a month ago. Meanwhile, Sunja, Seryung, and Robert walk amidst the people, wondering what's really going on. Hua tells Lee that when she returned, she noticed that everything had changed. In the streets, the trio continues to walk through the streets, wondering if anyone can see them at all. Hua Rin tells our guy that all the people act as if they're wind-up dolls, and they keep repeating the same things at the same time, in exactly the same way. While still on the streets, Robert reaches out and tries to stop one of the men walking on the streets. Hua Rin tells Lee that another odd thing happens if you try to stop any of the townspeople from doing their repetitive activities. On the streets, the man that Robert stops just stops on his tracks and doesn't turn at all. Robert speaks to the man and tells him that he would like to ask him about what's going on the planet, but the man seems quite busy on a call on his iPhone. Robert stops talking when he realizes that the man isn't answering him at all but continues on his phone. All of a sudden, he exclaims when he notices that the man has frozen right on the street and isn't moving a limb. Hua Rin tells Lee that whenever you try to stop any of the people from doing their usual activities, they stop. Meanwhile, Robert tries to signal the man, but he doesn't get a response. Not just that, everyone stops moving. Hua Rin tells Lee that something else happens after everyone stops moving. On the streets, every person suddenly starts to fade away like they were never there in the first place. The man Robert stopped fades away right before his eyes, and he just looks at him, surprised. He's honestly shocked and wonders what's going on. He looks toward Sunja and asks her what just happened, and asks if they had just teleported. Sunja just stares at the people disappear too, and she tells him she doesn't know. Seryung looks at Sunja and asks her what she means by that because there's no one that can know if she doesn't. The android tells them that it seems like teleportation judging from the particle waveform, but the issue is that it's too large a scale. Seryung doesn't understand and asks her what she means by that because she hadn't looked back to notice that everyone else had also disappeared. She and Robert look behind them, and they realize that they're all alone. She asks Sunja where everyone suddenly went to. Sunja just continues to scan the environment, and she tells them that all signs of life have disappeared from the entire planet. The captain is shocked to hear that and asks her to repeat what she just said. Meanwhile, Hua Rin tells Lee that when everyone disappears like that, something else happens. She looks outside towards the streets and tells him some strange creatures start to show up when people disappear like that. On the streets of the town, Seryung, Robert, and Sunja notice some odd things on the street. On the streets of the city, an army of robots marches towards them. They all march in a regular order, and a mist seems to suddenly cover the ground. Robert, Seryung, and Sunja stare at them in horror, and Robert asks what the heck those things are. The robots all seem to be wielding swords and continue to march towards them in a rhythmic order. The mist becomes stronger, and hundreds of robots come towards them from all directions. The captain answers that she's not sure either, but she says that it seems that they're in a very dangerous situation right now. She freezes on the spot and watches the robot walk towards them, unsure of where to go since they're trapped. She asks Sunja if they're androids while still looking at them. She also asks why they all look half-finished, since their abdominal region basically contains nothing but a connecting iron rod. Sunja scans them with her scanner and tells her that they're not androids, but construction droids. She explains that they are models created for simple labor like planetary development. Also, since they are early models, they're equipped with low-capacity AI, so their cognitive abilities are limited. Seryung slightly breathes a sigh of relief and says she freaked out for nothing since they're just construction droids. Seryung tells them that according to the 3 laws of robotics, droids can never harm a human, but Robert doesn't seem so sure. He notices they're holding swords and asks what construction droids would want to use them for. Seryung tells him they're probably using them in place of tools and walks towards the droids to signal them. She tells them there are people here and orders them to move aside and find another path so as not to crowd around and scare people. One of the droids runs towards her and tries to cut her nasty lips off. Before she can say Jack Robinson, it swings its swords towards her and tries to divide her in half, but she quickly releases an energy blast towards it. I always knew AI would take over the world. Fortunately, the blast gives her enough of a push to move out of the way and avoid the cut. She angrily looks at the droid and asks it what the heck it's doing and wonders if it's malfunctioning. Their response to her question shocks her, as several of them leap towards her with swords in her hands. They jump around like ninjas and proceed to cut her in pieces with her long, pointy swords. To stop them all at once, Seryung releases a large energy explosion towards them using her martial arts skill. From the Jaha Pavilion, Hua Rin and Lee see the large explosion rip through the city. She tells Lee that these are the things that she was talking about, and they always show up when the people disappear. In the streets, Seryung keeps releasing fire at the robots while Sunja clings to her waist to save her dear life, and Robert runs away like a wuss. Hua Rin tells Lee that the robots always attack every living thing they see. Meanwhile, the trio jumps on a roof and the robots follow them, hell-bent on tearing them to pieces. A swarm of robots are seen on the roof and on the ground, and it looks like there's nowhere to run. Hua Rin tells Lee that she was also attacked when she came back home after finishing her tour. She looks towards the left to look at her father's T-spot when she hears him leaving. She finds the spot empty and tells Lee that she wouldn't have survived if it were not for her father. Yang goes back to his throne and continues his meditation. Hua Rin tells Lee that for some reason, the robots never come to where her father is. Meanwhile, Yang returns back to his throne and rests his arm on it. He sits down, and the place starts to burn with a pinkish fire once more, like it did when they had just arrived. He soon closes his eyes, and his entire surroundings are enclosed with the pink fire again. As he goes deeper in his meditation, the bright pink light bursts out and the plum blossoms show up again. Hua Rin also tells Lee that if everyone disappears, only her dad seems to remain. The only bad part is that he remains in that state and cannot be reached. Lee looks right at him and tells her that Yang is trying to hang on. She turns to look at him and asks him what he means by that. He tells her that he's hanging on by burning his entire internal energy along with his soul, ready to face inner demons if he has to. It seems this has been the way he hasn't been destroyed. Lee puts a hand on Hua Rin's head and tells her it seems that there is something that Yang is trying to protect no matter what, referring to her. She just stares at her father with pity in her eyes, wondering what he must be going through. Our guy mentions that the Sword Sovereign's actions are quite admirable. He suddenly walks out of the chamber and tells her to follow him so he can take care of all this. The girl is shocked at his abrupt exit and asks him where they're going. He doesn't turn back, and he tells her he wants to take a good look at the face of the scum responsible for this. Meanwhile, on the streets, Seryung, Sunja, and Robert escape to a dead end, and it seems there's nothing to do but to face the robots. They're surrounded by droids on all sides, and they wonder what to do before they're killed. The droids all stare at them with eerie red eyes, and they don't look like they're here to play.